hop into it right now. So I want to talk briefly about what every hero tells me when I look at it and when I think about drafting it. You know, what's the key line with a hero. So first up is Abaddon. The hero is extremely good against single targets. He does well against the enemy's disables. So anything like Beastmaster, Mirana with her long stun arrow, he can save people really well. He's also very good in the sense that he can frontline, which adds quite a bit when you push, especially when you want to break high ground. Since he's hard to focus down, his ulti is very, very good for that. And I think he's a pretty strong offlaner. I'm not going to talk too much about if they're strong in the current patch or anything like that. This is going to be a general what the hero does. Sorry for adding that. But that's about the key things that I think about. Abaddon really is just about saving people, and he's great against single target. When there's multi-stuns, like Fisher or something, catching your entire enemy team or entire team, it becomes much harder saving them with a aphotic shield. So then maybe Omnanai is better. Alchemist, just a very greedy hero. He does really well on mid lane against most things, since Acid Spray allows you to farm so much. And I think the power of Alchemist is that it caps out early. He gets his farm. When you get 6 Law on Alchemist, you can break high ground because the enemy carry will probably just have 2.5 items or maybe 3 items complete at that time. And he's pretty good if you have a strong 5-man multi-support lineup, and actually pretty good with Abaddon and heroes like that who can just sit behind him and enable him. He's not very good at playing against some things though, such as Ancient Apparition, of course, being the hardest counter in the game that ulti just destroys you. So you want to be careful about when you pick Alchemist, but you don't have to care much about which mid-hero the enemy has. That is kind of irrelevant, but your mentality should be to get your item slots early and then just finish the game. Axe. I think this is the anti-carry hero. He's extremely good at just destroying carries with his blade mail. He's pretty hard to lane against if you're a melee hero, so he can go offlane in some scenarios, but he doesn't do that well in a outnumbered scenario. If there's a lot of enemy heroes, he can get shut down on lane a lot because ranged supports can bully him away. But a dual lane, like Axe plus Undying or anything like that, can contest most lanes. And in a 1 versus 1 scenario, Axe can win against pretty much anything that's short range. Even Timbersaw, who's a pretty interesting matchup. But I think the power of Axe is just his pickoffs on enemy carries, and you can go late game because of that with the Blade Mill. And that's basically... So you want to pick him against heroes like PA or something who have immense damage output and just turn that damage back on him with Blade Mill. Beastmaster, I think, is probably one of the most versatile heroes in Dota, but he's not being used as much. The thing about him is that he gives this map control that can enable you to play aggressively across the map because you know where the enemy are going to be. The Hawk is extremely useful for this. His laning stage is very strong. He's a powerful hero in every way. His Spore being really, really strong. You need to make sure not to feed it. His one weakness would probably be, well, Abaddon, as we mentioned in the beginning, that something that can counter-initiate. And I think one of his weaknesses is actually items. The Lotus Orb or Glimmer Cape or anything like this. Sure, you can have a Necro Book to counter a Glimmer Cape, but Lotus Orb is really, really good against him. Because you roar a guy and then they Lotus Orb. This sounds strange, right? Because they... then they don't return the roar, but it's hard to continue going on a guy. And that's the thing about Beastmaster. You want to target one guy, say, this guy dies now, and then you push or whatever. And as I said, pushing is a really big thing for Beastmaster. His 5-man with aura is extremely strong. You can take Roche with the Vision. I would pick Beast into pretty much anything. There's nothing really that worries me that much if I wanted to play a Beastmaster. I actually think maybe Legion Commander, because if you go Necro Army, that can be a troublesome thing, and the heal acts the same way as Abaddon, so you can also save people from the ulti. But other than that, I think he can work against most things. Brewmaster. He's a tough hero to call, actually. Right now, I don't have much love for him, because in the current state of the game, but he is good against heroes like Ursa or other heroes that you can just control with your Cyclone while you kill off the rest of their team. Brewmaster plays really, really well against Medusa, for instance. You just Cyclone her repeatedly in a team fight and kill off every single friend that she has. I think Brewmaster is good against Wisp lineups because you can easily just Cyclone the carry, kill the Wisp, and then proceed from there. He's very good at making sure you focus the right target, but he does revolve heavily around team play. He doesn't really kill people that easily on his own unless you get the Aghanims. So I think if he wasn't so weak in the current state of the game, I would say he's a great pick against one core lineups because you just chain stun that guy. Bristleback. I think Bristleback, to me, the first thing that pops in my head is just Wisp, right? You kind of need Wisp to enable Bristleback. His laning stage is not that impressive. He doesn't do that much on his own. He needs a partner for sure. Another hero that can go together with him is Coddle. So if you have any player who can play these two heroes and wants to lane with you, you can do a lot of damage either with the tether and chasing people down or the mana leak so they can't keep running away, and then you just quill spray them to death with the chakra. But I think the power of Bristleback is probably in the early game. Like, he gets countered so heavily by Yule Scepters, Force Staffs, and Glimmer Capes. Like, anything that kites you is the big weakness of Bristleback, and that is why you need stuff to make sure that you can catch the enemy if you want to play this hero. So that's the number one thing to think about. And again, a hero that would be extremely countered by Brewmaster, the Cyclone. You would never buy a BKB on Bristleback in a normal scenario, but against the Brewmaster you would get forced to do it. Centaur has an interesting aspect now. With his Aghanims change, I think that he's actually pretty great at counter-initiating. I used to say that he was an initiator. You want to get to jump on the enemy so you can deal all the damage and burst one of the supports down with your Hoofstomp double edge. But now with the Aghanims mitigating so much of the damage, you can wait till the enemy goes on you. Say they RP or something and you have an Aghanim Scepter, you can just completely stop their initiation because the damage output is going to be nothing. The way I see Centaur being played though is as a carry, probably farming up and then trying to finish the game early. SD is a good combination because the towers are going to take the return damage, so you can keep sending illusions over and over. He's pretty strong in this illusion meta. And other than that, I think he just needs to play aggressively with Blink Dagger nonstop. That's the only way you can play this. Chaos Knights. Okay, this hero is very interesting because he normally is not played that much. He could be, but the issue is that he doesn't farm that fast. He doesn't really have any spell that allows him to farm, but his ulti does have super long duration. So what you want to do is fight when you have your ulti ready. You should skill your ulti early. Some people wait till level 10 and then skill it twice, 10, 11. I think that's a mistake. The illusions are extremely strong. If you get 2 of them already at level 6, that's going to destroy people, and then you have illusions ready for like 20 seconds where you could just farm or push towers with them after the team fight being over. So I think CK, for me, he's pretty ulti dependent, and he's also fight dependent, but he is one of the strongest late gamers, for sure. I think he, again, though, is the same scenario as the Bristleback. Needs a Wisp or something to enable him, because he is very hard to play if you can't catch people. Okay, Clockwerk. He's one of the heroes that doesn't really do too well in the Iron Talon meta, I feel. He doesn't really get much by going jungle and trying to farm there, but he can be really strong with a Blade Mail. Any hero in the game can struggle if you get caught. I feel he has this timing window where he's good, and then when the enemy finish up 4 staffs on supports or Hurricane Pikes on a carry Drow or whatever, anything like that, you're going to struggle to catch anyone and hold them down for a long time. But one of the big strengths of Clockwerk is he has a pretty low cooldown BKB piercing hook. When it's level 3, you can keep going on people. If you go for the Aghanims as well, it's really great for team fighting. I believe it goes down to 12 seconds. Yeah, 12-second cooldown when you get Aghanims, and that's independent on what level it is. So if you finish an early Ags, that's really great for you. Well, I think he's also in the anti-carry category, same as Axe. It's just harder now that they can force staff away, whereas Axe if he calls someone, they can't really get away. They need to be saved by a teammate. Doombringer, again, we're seeing a lot of the anti-carries here. Doom, extremely good at just making the game 5v4. As soon as the team fight starts, you need to be using Doom on someone before they use any of their skills, preferably, and chase them down, maybe, or chase someone else down. In some scenarios, you can Doom like an Abaddon, so he can't save his team, and then just kill his team first. But I think Doom is just a... He's a very aggressive hero that needs to make use of his ulti every single time it's off cooldown, and try and take control of the game. The downside to Doom is that he just has this long cast time on his ulti, so you need to go like Shadowblade, I feel, in the current state of the game, and then just try and play the 5v4 game. You need to make sure you think about the right target to Doom before every fight. That should be something you have premeditated going into every fight. Dragon Knight, he's very, very dull, I feel. He's just a pusher. He's very simple to sum up. He pushes towers. You farm the mid lane, and as soon as the mid laner leaves the lane, the enemy, you just pop your ulti, start hitting the tower, and you're very hard to gank. You're so tanky. If they're gonna gank you, it's gonna take at least 3 heroes if you're full HP. So you just want to get that mid tower gone, and when you have gotten that out of the way, you keep going for the next towers, keep taking down more and more. Some of his weaknesses, though, are heavy spell damage lineups, and I think the downside of playing a Dragon Knight is that you need to revolve heavily around 5-man, because he doesn't do well when the game splits up and everyone is on their own. You need to make use of the ulti non-stop and just keep going. So it's kind of an all-in, I feel, when I see a Dragon Knight lineup. That said, he can get strong late game, but it's not the best. Earth Spirit, this hero provides so many different tools. He did get a heavy nerf to his role, which hurt him, but he was also probably the best hero in the game when he was released into Captain's Mode. He had 82% win rate out of 28 games played or something. It was crazy. That was the first tournament he was played in. He just did not lose. And the hero is pretty clutch, I would say. Like, you need to think about every single spell you use, because they're gonna cost stones, and if you use too many in a single team fight, it's gonna take very long before you can commit heavily to a new team fight. But when I think about Earth Spirit, mainly he just roams. Early on, he needs to find solo kills by going to the mid lane and just setting up a slow on someone. Some of the heroes that he suffers against in laning phase actually are Queen of Pain and Puck, heroes like this, because they're very hard to roll in on and kill. But later on, he becomes pretty good against them because he has a stun and a silence. So he's a sort of interesting hero in that regard. I think some of his biggest weaknesses, though, are heroes like Anti-mage, who just destroy him later on, Mantisal to break the silence, and the magic resistance, of course. All your damage is magical. So you struggle against him, you struggle actually against Meeple, and even though you have AoE stuns and silences, I don't think it's a good matchup where you don't do any damage to the Meeple, apart from your magical. And I just think he is a little bit hard to play in the early game now, post-nerfs. Earthshaker, this is a hero that can be played in so many ways. He can support, he can offlane, he can even mid lane. I think he is very durable, and it's hard to stop him from farming with Fissure. So the Blink Dagger is very hard to deny. He's going to get it before 20 minutes if he knows what he's doing. And 20 minutes is not a fast timing, but if he's really good and having a good game, he could have it at 13 minutes or so. And he's the anti-5-man hero. So whenever you play against the Dragon Knight or anything like that, you know they're going to push towers. And when they get to your high ground, that's when you can just be ready to punish them. I think one of the hard things about playing Earthshaker has to be... it has to be silences, in my opinion. I think anything that silences you in a fight, instant silences in particular, are going to be extremely hard to play against, because there are even scenarios where you blink in and someone has precast silence on you and you just get destroyed. So I think you want to play against a lineup with a 5-man push, preferably, and for them not to have something instant to catch you out. For instance, if you jump 3 people and you get a nice ulti off, but then Silencer hits his ulti, then none of your teammates are going to be able to help you, and you can't fissure even, and then you're just dead. I think stuff like that is really his weakness. Elder Titan, he's an anti-agi carry. Anything that has high basic armor, anyone with high natural armor is going to be destroyed by his third skill, the Natural Order. And I think he scales extremely well into late game. He's also a big combo hero. Anything like Void to set up so you can make sure his Earth Splitter hits. Even some heroes like Fiend's Grip from Bane or Black Hole from Enigma, any big combo setups are going to be extremely useful for him. Of course, Mirana is good too. If you land a long arrow, you can always get the Earth Splitter on them. But I think the first thing that pops into my head when I see Elder Titan is just Void, because that combination is very hard to play against. It's a guaranteed splitter, and that hurts a lot. If you cannot get that off, he's kind of lackluster, in fact. And in pubs, he's very hard to play because people wake people up, where they shouldn't. Huskar, that's just the #1 cheese hero in the game. He's been played a lot recently, but I think Huskar is just... It's just a hero that gets countered by AA entirely. You should never really be allowed to play Huskar without the enemy being able to pick AA unless you last pick. So if you don't have AA on the enemy team, though, this is the biggest armlet toggler in the game. You can stay alive against pretty much anything. Physical damage is the only thing you have to worry about that much. So great counter to heroes like Zeus or whatever. And he does want to high ground early, so you need to have some healer behind you, Dazzle, Oracle, whatever, just something to protect you. Wisp is also great with him, because allows you to catch people. He does get kited quite a bit, and if the enemy get Heaven's Halberd, that's a very good item against him, giving them evasion and the ability to disarm you. Of course, that can also be countered by BKB on your side, so Huskar is extremely strong in the early state of the game, but the later the game goes, the more stressed you're gonna be to finish it somehow. Wisp is, well, he's the #1 tricky hero in the game to play against, I would say. If the enemy have a Wisp and they know what they're doing, I shouldn't say a Wisp, I should say a Wisp pair. You need to have 2 players who know what to do with Wisp, and if that's true, they can just take over the game. And that's true in competitive, that's true in pub. I think Wisp extremely heavily revolves around team play. Not so much what hero he has with him, because there are a lot of combos. I think Legion Commander is super strong, CK is good, Tiny is good, Bristleback is good. There are so many different... Sven is good. There are so many different combos you can go for with Wisp, but I think the big power is that the enemy have to 5-man. This forces the enemy to 5-man, because if they don't, you can easily pick them off when they split push. That's why the heroes that I mentioned, apart from Bristleback, are all disablers, so that the enemy cannot just TP out or walk away when you relocate gank them. So if they're alone, you want to be able to just find that opportunity and take it. Kunkka, he is so strong. The rum buff from the ship is the biggest part about the hero, I'm gonna say. You can obviously play him as a core or support in the current patch, but the buff from the ship makes it almost impossible to take a team fight if you don't wait out the rum duration. It's 10 seconds, and during that time, 50% of all incoming damage will be delayed, and it won't be lethal when it comes 10 seconds later. So it's so hard to fight against. I think a great hero against him, just because of that effect from the ship actually, is Venomancer, and I hate Venomancer, but I admitted it. Other than that, Kunkka is pretty good all stages of the game. He has a strong laning stage, has a support or core, and late game he can one-hit wonder people. Even if you're a support, you can transition into a core. Just by building Armlet and Daedalus later on, you will deal tons of damage. A big part about Kunkka is that he doesn't care so much what armor anyone really has. It doesn't matter. When he hits someone, the Tidebringer is just gonna pure damage through that. So he's very good against high armor heroes like Dragon Knight, and he doesn't do that well against heroes with actual damage mitigation like Centaur Ulti or something like that. If you X mark someone, torrent ship, and then they Centaur ulti and run away, your ship, the run buff is already ticking, you're not dealing damage, and then later on, maybe the fight turns around. Stuff like that is dangerous for you. Also, Lifestealer is probably one of the best heroes against you, as he always has the rage. And Juggernaut similarly with the spin. Right? Long talk about Kunkka, but he's very popular right now. Legion Commander. This hero is very good in the same way that Abaddon is good, but the downside being that you're not just the support, and you're not just gonna be ignored. You're gonna be focused, and they're gonna try and kill you, and you need someone who can help you as well. Okay? So press the attack can save anyone from a stun and make sure your teammates stay alive. It can also be used aggressively to kill someone. So that way, if you play Legion, you need to be pretty quick on your decision making. You should sit back and wait for the fight to start, I would say, and then pick your target. Of course, if you have Blade Mail and the enemy are split up, you can always go and find solo kills. But in a fight, you should see what happens first and then react. Maybe you purge a stun of one of your teammates and then counter-initiate with your ulti and get a kill. So I think Legion Commander is a pretty delicate hero in the sense that you can't just run in and be too aggressive. But when you do go in, you need to have chosen your time so they don't have stuff to save that target, like Disruption or Grave or whatever. And Dazzle is probably the worst hero in the game to play against as Legion Commander, by the way. Lifestealer, he's very, very strong, obviously, against all these strength heroes. That's kind of his thing. He does really well when the enemy has high HP. He scales fairly well into the late game, but I think his power peak is going for the early pressure. With Desolator and Echo Saber and Armlet, you hit extremely hard. No hero in the game can really stand against you in the early game if you get your free farm. You can do some shenanigans as well with your ulti. So I think you should be using that. Go into a creep every now and then and run at the enemy. If you sit in an ancient creep and you run at the enemy, they can't really kill you. And you can run in to Fog of War and maybe you find someone that you can kill and he's alone. Okay, then you hop out and kill him. If you find a lot of enemies, well, then you can walk away, because that was obviously not a good place to go. I think the Ancient is a big part about Lifestealer, and it's not about sitting in Ancient for the entire team fight, it's just about having that as your taxi, and then you hop out, kill someone, and maybe you get a new taxi afterwards. Lycan, he's definitely a push strat hero. He doesn't want to go late game at all. He does well against heroes that don't have blinks or escape mechanisms. And he pressures towers extremely hard. I think probably one of the best rat heroes out of all the strength heroes. He's probably the best rat. Just taking towers and being on other parts of the map, avoiding your enemy. But he does fight pretty well if you have good control in your team. So anything like Pit of Malice, Black Hole, not Void ulti so much, because you can't really run into it. It would have to be a surgical Void ulti holding the enemy on the side of it. But any good disable will allow Lycan to kill stuff. And the number one combo, in fact, out of all heroes in the game, is Puck. Puck is extremely strong with Lycan. His ulti holds people in place, and it has very low cooldown, so that way you can work together very easily. Since you have 60-second cooldown on your level 6 or level 3 ulti, you can make use of it every single minute on the 75-second cooldown of Puck. So it's pretty good. And that's about it. I think late game, he does fall off a little bit. He's still going to be strong, but again, suffers the same thing as Bristleback. When the enemy gets their kiting items, Ghost Scepter, Force Staff, Blink Dagger, whatever, you're going to have a hard time locking anyone down. And Abyssal Blade is a very expensive item that you don't really want to go for early. So there is a timing where things get really hard. Magnus. Okay, this is obviously the hero that you want to pair up with any melee carry that you think could be a little bit hard to run, and you're like, oh, I'm not sure that our PA is going to be able to out-carry all the heroes that the enemy have. Well, put Empower on her, and all you need to do is land 1 RP in a game. And if it's a good RP and the carry is there with Empower, you win. It's incredibly powerful, and I think people underestimate how good the Empower is actually at just speeding up farm. You can even run the double carry where you have like an offlane Void or some offlaner who can right-click a lot. Currently, of course, Void is super good for that, but even heroes like Broodmother with Empower turn pretty scary. Um, and I think one of the big things for Magnus is just getting items that can surprise your enemy, right? Everyone knows that Blink Dagger on Magnus is crazy good, but Blink, Force, and Shadow Blade, those three items together will allow you to find so many more RPs than if you go for any other build. If you have these items, you can be super far away, invisible, Force Staff in, Blink in, RP them, and skewer them to your team. There's no way you see that coming. You can expect it, but you won't see it happening. So that's what I think about Magnus. Night Stalker. This hero is all about control of the game. He kills all the vision that the enemy have. That's the number one thing that I think about. Sure, his silence and his gank potential is good, but it's about controlling the game. Same way that Beastmaster does. Night Stalker takes over the map. You want to get to the point where you have Aghanims and Gem and an Iron Talon in your inventory. You're already going to be using Iron Talon to farm up. I think the best way to play him right now is either off lane aggressively or position 4 support where you go Iron Talon first, get some items, get your boots before minute 4, and then gank. And then you're going to have the Iron Talon for your Aghanims later on so you can deward the wards on cliffs. And he's very hard to play against. The vision reduction even if you don't find all the wards, just using your ulti off cooldown or using it as often as possible is going to make it hard for the enemy to play. The vision reduction is extremely strong. Omni Knight, this is one of the most underestimated heroes in Dota, and that's why it has such a high win rate. People underestimate the turnaround potential of Omni Knight. You go on someone, you think you can kill him, suddenly it gets purified, repelled, and GA comes out, and you might be sitting there with not a single tool that goes through GA and repel at the same time. Not many things do. He does struggle pretty heavily against heroes that can go on the back line, because Omni doesn't really, well, unless you're playing him as a farming offlaner, he doesn't really go on the front line that much. And if you get silenced, if you get jumped by a queen with Orchid or anything like that, that's where you're going to struggle. I think Guardian Greaves made it a lot easier to play Omni Knight though, because you can purge the silence with Guardian Greaves. So I guess at this point, his biggest weakness is almost stuns or just abilities that keep him away from his teammates. Because that's one thing about Omni. He needs to be close to his teammates so he can save them, but you don't really buy any maneuverability items for them. You're not going to buy like Blink Dagger, Force Staff, or anything like that in a typical game out of Omni Knight. You're probably going for Mech Guardian Greaves, maybe a Glimmer Cape, maybe a Radiance carry, you know, who knows, but Blink Dagger is not so common. And I think for that reason, Fissure and stuff that can keep you away, even Pit of Malice from Underlord, is really gonna make the enemy able to kill your carry. Right. Other than that, of course, the Diffusal Blade is a big counter to your arsenal, not being able to save anyone anymore. Phoenix, I think, it's a very strong hero in dual lane scenarios. I still think he can pressure people heavily. The strength of Phoenix was quite heavily shown in the meta where people just maxed out the Sunray and healed their allies a lot. This got nerfed and it's not as strong anymore. But I think Phoenix is still extremely good at saving people, and that's kind of his thing. You wait for the enemy to go, and then when they're committing heavily to a fight, you dive in, you use your Icarus dive to get close, fire spirits everyone, and then pop ulti. That's going to make it so hard for them to keep going on the same target. Even if they have BKB on, you're going to stun them when you come out of your supernova. And that's a 2.5 second stun that pierces BKB in level 3. And it's also going to deal a lot of damage. So I think, that said, even without Aghanim's upgrade, being able to pick someone up, Phoenix already is so good at saving. And then I've seen some amazing plays with Aghanims that makes me feel that Phoenix is an underestimated hero for saving teammates. And one of the strongest counter initiators in the game. Right. Pudge. I think Pudge is extremely underestimated as well on competitive scene. In pubs, of course, he gets played all the time, but he doesn't get played often in competitive, and for that reason, people are not used to playing against him. They don't position well for the hooks, trying to stay away from it. And I think the big thing about Pudge is you need level 2 early. And you don't get experience from the Bounty Rune level 1 anymore. You don't get experience for dewarding the enemy's sentry wards or observer wards anymore. So with these things combined, it's hard to get your levels. And I think Pudge needs to do a few pulls and then start ganking everyone. But from there, he's good in the late game. Because of the Aghanim's upgrades with Aetherlens, Pudge is good all game long, and he keeps getting stronger the more you fight. So you don't want to play a passive game to go late game, but you just want to keep playing aggressively and find kills wherever you can. Dying for a kill is never really a bad thing for a Pudge. Sand King, okay, this is probably the strongest counter initiator in the game. We talked about Phoenix earlier. If you ever commit heavily onto an enemy team and then Sand King is sitting around, that's going to make it hard for you to play. I think currently Sand King Caustic Finale is so strong it's probably going to get nerfed soon. His offlane is #1 in the current state of the game. It's very hard to be a melee hero against this Caustic Finale. It's hard because it slows you and deals so much damage, and that allows him to chase you down with a stun and keep doing more Caustic Finales on you. I think big thing about playing against him is ranged heroes and silences, and later on in the game you need solid stuns as well against him, so you can bring him down. A hero that works pretty well against him is if the enemy have an offlane Sand King, then you have an offlane Faceless Void. That's going to work out great for you later on, because first off you have Chronosphere, which is great for just locking down the Sand King. You also have Bash, which might be able to cancel some epicenters, and Time Dilation screws up Sand King so hard. He relies heavily on having the burst strike multiple times in a team fight, and if he doesn't, he is pretty easy to chase down. Despite having a Blink Dagger or whatever, you will be able to chase him down if he can't burst strike at all. Slardar, again, pretty much an anti-carry hero. The minus armor is extremely good for just bringing people down. Combos well with Sven, combos well with PA and Templar Assassin. Any hero in your team that deals a lot of physical damage is going to be the best buddy of Slardar. So Razor also falls into that category. And one of the big strengths about Slardar is his low cooldown on the Slithering Crush. You have this available pretty much all the time. 8-second cooldown, 2.5 second stun, and then a 2-second slow afterwards. That uptime is crazy good. So it's a 4.5 second effect and 8-second cooldown. That is very, very useful. And of course it's physical as well, so keep in mind that your amplify damage will make you deal insane damage with the Crush. If the enemy has a low armor hero in particular, it's going to be very good. And for that reason, the Crush does seem less impressive in the late game, where magical damage is a little bit better unless you really stack up on the minus armor. Another hero to pair with, I think, is Dazzle. Really, really good with Slardar as well. So you can build some heavy minus armor heroes, Dazzle, Venge, TA, and Razor, stuff like this. Next hero, Spiritbreaker. I think this hero is enabled a lot by Darkseer, but if he's not having a Darkseer in his team who can Iron Shell him and make sure that you actually do damage on level 1 when you run at people, then the trick about playing Spiritbreaker is just run at people, and you're not going to get kills on level 1 probably, but keep messing with them early on and make sure to disrupt the lanes. That's the #1 thing that this hero does. He messes with the laning phase a lot. He makes it hard to play mid, and any mid hero who doesn't have any escape mechanism is going to be an easy kill for you if you just know what you're doing. Also keep in mind to try and not charge through any wards, because that's the biggest thing about Spiritbreaker. You need to position yourself so your charge comes in from a nice angle, so they don't see you until you're too close to react to. Because if they see you early and counter TP with their support, maybe you feed instead. Other than that, he's a pretty good hero throughout the entire stage of the game. Later on, of course, the Nether Strike is good against any BKB carry, as you can lock them down a little bit during that time. Alright, next hero, Sven. Very, very good against physical damage, and also deals a terrible amount of physical damage himself. Or terrifying, I should say. So the Warcry is an ability that people don't understand how good it is. Sometimes you play Sven and the enemy runs up to trade with you, the enemy hard carry thinks he's gonna fight you. You have 20 bonus armor when this skill is online. and it's 8-second duration, 14-second cooldown. I can't believe it when I see a Sven not max out Warcry until he's like level 23 or whatever. It makes me so tilted. So yeah, the number one thing about Sven is just countering the enemy physical damage. That allows you to dive towers pretty hard, and if you just make sure to burst the enemy magic damage heroes early on with a stun and a blink and kill them, then you can keep fighting under tower against their carry with some physical damage pretty easily, in fact. And he's also extremely good with Echo Saber. Echo Saber is good. Tidehunter. This is a very, very tricky hero to play against because he has this massive ulti that ruins your team fight. If you don't have a BKB on your team, you can't really go in comfortably as a carry against this. You get ravaged, and then Anchor Smash happens. 60% of your damage reduction. You know, it's gonna make you unable to go on anyone and kill someone. He's a very good counter initiator, but I think the weakness of Tide is you need to pressure before the enemy get multiple BKBs, and you need to take Roche, you need to take towers, because when they get immunity on their course, it's not so easy to play anymore. And Tide's weakness is heroes who actually can kill him. There are some heroes in the game that allow you to focus a Tide first. Normally you cannot do this, but some heroes allow you to. And one of them is Void. The Chronosphere, you can't proc your... well, you can proc it, but it's not going to matter because you're still stuck. If you proc your Kraken Shell, but you're in the Chronosphere already, you're still going to be able to just die there and not get your Ravage off. Any hero with a silence, you don't really care as Tidehunter. If they silence you, you just run into a center of the fight, someone is going to hit you with some AoE damage, you proc Kraken Shell, and you're not silenced anymore, and your Ravage will come out to counter a team fight. So the big thing about Tide is trying to not ever go on him unless you have Enigma, Black Hole, or Void, Chronosphere. Those are two of the best things for bringing him down. And there's probably something else that I just do not remember right now. Obviously, Doom ulti is pretty good against Tide. But there are very few things in the game that really allow you to go on him. Yeah, that's about it, actually. So you need to be able to play around him, play against his team, and if you're Tide, try and build up some tankiness that allows you to high ground the enemy early. Timbersaw. This hero scales extremely well into the late game. People often think that heroes with a set amount of damage are not going to be that good later on in the game, but for Timber it's simply not true, because he has so much damage. And the more items you get, the more you're going to be able to hit enemies with your spells. Be it Blink Dagger, Octarine, whatever. Doesn't really matter. All your items are going to ultimately come down to being able to hit the enemy with more spells. And I think Timber is obviously anti-strength due to his Whirling Death. But he's also anti-melee, and he counters some low HP carries really hard. Like, if you hate Slark, if you're a pub player who hates Slark because he kills your support instantly and you never know where he is, and if you're a carry, you can't really lock him down and kill him, play Timbersaw, because you just throw your Chakram, you use Timber Chain to chase him, he can't even outrun you even when he's invis. And Whirling Death is also pure damage if you're close to trees. All this damage, it just destroys non-BKB carries. And you force a hero like Slark, who normally wants to go for Silver's Edge and Echo Saber, to get a BKB earlier than he ever wished for. Alright, next hero, Tiny. Okay, Tiny falls into a category... he's the first hero out of the category that is special in my mind. That is, if you ever lose a team fight outside of your base to a Tiny, your base is gone immediately. Like, you need to think about where you fight if you're playing against Tiny. And likewise, if you are Tiny, just make sure to get your carry items and think a lot about your initiation into a fight. Because you can burst one enemy support or maybe even a core down very quickly. The Toss Avalanche combo hurts a lot, and that's why I think Shadowblade, it's almost the same as Magnus. The Shadowblade Blink build, you don't really need a Force Staff always, but even that could be a good item. But Shadowblade and Blink are extremely good because you can pick your target, and that's the biggest thing for Tiny. He wants to find anyone who has low enough HP to instant burst them, and then he keeps fighting from there with this very low cooldown. And that's his strength. He also scales very well into late game. He becomes a very powerful carry, and extremely good with buffs like Invoker Alacrity, or Venge Aura, or Beastmaster in your team. Anything that buffs up right click is going to be very good for Tiny. Treant. Treant is a greedy support, I would say. He's a hero that he needs to get levels, but he also, while he is sort of good in a try versus try scenario, he's pretty easy to play around. And I think his dream scenario is sitting in the jungle with his trees, pulling creeps, getting levels, and just using his living armor to make the mid lane and the off lane easier for your team, and then hoping to just get level 6 and be able to run around and use the ulti. The ulti is pretty strong, but since it doesn't do any damage anymore, it's a long time since they changed, until you get Aghanims. Since it doesn't do any damage, he doesn't have the most impressive effect on a team fight, and your carry needs to be one of those glass cannon kind of heroes who can kill people quickly. Luckily, he can buff them up with living armor, so pair him up with anything like a PA or Shadow Fiend on a mid lane even, and he can suddenly be a useful hero. But he's not good every single game. You need to know what you're doing, for sure. Tusk. Tusk is a hero that has so much potential. If you know what you're doing with the ice shards, your positioning of it, you can really get some value out of your ganks early on. I think he needs a few levels before he can be that effective. It comes down to what heroes you have on your team, I suppose. But if you get a few levels, so you have Snowball, Ice Shards, and Sigil all available to you, most heroes without a blink are just instantly dead if you gank together with your mid laner. And that's the key thing for Tusk, in my opinion. Play around your mid, play around your carry. You don't really want to use anyone who's weak in your team. You want to go towards whoever has the most items, and you can enable them so much. You can snowball, pull them in, you can lock the enemy in place, you can make sure the enemy can't really trade with your Frozen Sigil, and you can even cancel channeling abilities with your Walrus Punch and Snowball. So I think he's just very good at playing around the strongest hero in your team, and that's what you should be doing a lot. Underlord. Okay, this hero, probably a lot of people were wondering this when he was coming into Dota 2, and it was very recently. What is he going to be doing? How is he going to be useful? And from watching a lot of games where he has been played, I think the strength of Underlord is, almost said Undying, is dual laning off lane. He can be a support, but if he just has a little bit of help on the off lane, he can take over, and the Firestorm is very hard to play against if you're a melee carry. The aura that he carries is going to mitigate so much of the enemy damage going later into the game, especially if you buy up a Crimson Guard. This is truly a hero that just blocks a ton of damage, and then you can even save people with Dark Rift. He does do pretty well late game, because Pit of Malice is so strong against BKB, which kind of is one of the things when you go late into a Dota game, very many people are going to get the BKB and just, try and play around it. But being able to hold people in place even through spell resistance or magic resistance means that you can lock down people like Lifestealer, Juggernaut, whatever, and be extremely strong at just pressuring early on with all these items. I think the core item for him is Crimson Guard. Undying. Alright, this is a lane winner. Some heroes are just, marked in my head as lane winners, and Undying is one of them. He 100% needs to contest a lot early on. The K is so powerful, it's hard to turn and fight against the Undying, and sometimes running away means you're forfeiting your safe lane or forfeiting map control in general. He falls off pretty hard later on, but Flesh Golem is useful through the entire game. The only downside is you don't really have any repositioning spells. You're probably not going to get that many items because of the nature of Undying. He doesn't really have farm spells. And because of this, if you get stunned or silenced or controlled in general in a team fight, you might not be living that long anymore in the later stages. So I think the only item that really matters for Undying is if you get your Aghanims. That will allow you to decay and steal so much HP that even in the later stages of the game, the enemy can't just burst you that easily. And a thing that people don't know typically is that Flesh Golem works against Roshan. So you should use Flesh Golem when your team Rosh, because it makes Rosh very, very fast. And it can surprise people, because most people, even like some people who have played for many, many years, are unaware of this. Wraith King, he suffers heavily against any form of mana burn. He doesn't have many spells. He only has his ulti, and it's 160 mana, and Wraith Fire Blast. But he suffers really heavily if the enemy has flat mana burn against him. Diffusal or Nyx or Invoker, these are things that you don't want to play against. Of course, Anti-mage is a really, really bad carry matchup as well. If you're playing carry Wraith King as carry Anti-mage, you need to have an extremely good game so that you get much more farm than him. He does fit pretty well into aura pushes, I'm gonna say. Like, again, the Dazzle, Venge, minus armor kind of stuff is good for him. The critical strike is so strong in team fights. But I think his weakness is that he's kind of obvious what he's gonna be doing. He's gonna, like he gets kited a lot in team fights, and that's why Echo Saber and Blink Dagger allows you to jump in and instant kill someone with your stun. So playing around that, you can surprise the enemy a little bit. Right. Next hero, Anti-mage. We just talked about him, how he counters the Wraith King. But other than that, Anti-mage is one of the best farming carries in the game. He doesn't rely heavily on illusions to farm like a Naga or Terrorblade or whatever. But he has that blink, blinks around and gets so much gold on the map. And first thing that pops into my mind is space. You know, can your team create space for you? Are you going to be able to get away with your safe lane? Are you going to have an Undying contesting you, for instance? Which will make it very hard to farm. A secured laning phase for Anti-mage normally scales into a one game. I think some of the hardest things in the game to play against for Anti-mage is Rupture from Bloodseeker, the Elder Titan Spirit with the Natural Order, giving so much minus armor. And other than that, I think Anti-mage struggles against... He struggles against being pressured in general in lane. So Darkseer, Undying, Sand King, anything that can contest your lane pretty heavily, that's going to be the hardest thing. Even Broodmother can be very difficult to deal with. But he does play extremely well later on against one currently popular carry in Morphling. Since he has so much mana pool for you to just ulti and slam on, and of course burning Morphling's mana, which he already might be using to the edge, just barely being able to save mana for one waveform away. You jump in, you hit him once, okay, you know, game over. Little tip for Anti-mage players is that your timings should be something like Tread's Battle Fury at minutes 12 or 13 is probably going to be a good timing. If you get your Vladimir's around 17 minutes, that's good. And anything faster than 23 minutes Manta is going to be an okay timing. Anything faster than 20-minute Manta is going to be a very powerful timing, and you should play aggressively around that. Just a little bit of particular info around him. Arc Warden. Oh my god, it's such a frustrating hero. It hurts me actually to speak about him, because playing against him is so annoying, I feel. The spirits are very strong for scouting. The duration of them, 50 seconds, is insane. Very low mana cost as well. When you have level 6 on this hero, you just control so much. Arc Warden can turn into a carry from support, or he can be played as a carry on the mid lane. And I think that's probably his strongest position, because he's so hard to gank when he has the Spark Wraith out all the time. He also makes high grounding very difficult for the enemy. The magnetic field is crazy good for holding your base. 6.5 second cooldown. You have two of them, or duration, you have two of them, and it's 20-second cooldown. Pair that up with your glyph or fortification, and the enemy can't really high ground you. So a good hero at holding high ground who also scales extremely well into late game. I think Arc Warden is very powerful. And he also does pretty well if he wants to go off lane and contest the enemy safe laner. If he goes together with a hero like Undying, it's crazy hard to play against that. Those two heroes together are really insane. Bloodseeker, again, we mentioned he's a hero who ruptures and counters Anti-mage, and that's pretty much the thing about Bloodseeker. He counters mobility heroes. How does he do this? Well, first of all, the Rupture, based on how they travel away, they take damage, you know this. But his movement speed, he's so fast. Even if you do get the blink away, alright, he keeps chasing you, and then he Ruptures you, and then you can't blink again. Or maybe, okay, he Ruptures you, you can survive blinking once, and then what? Then he runs you down, and then you're still dead. The duration on Rupture is what you should keep in mind. 12-second duration is kind of broken, honestly. People underestimate how good this is. The weakness of Bloodseeker, though, is when the enemy 5-man early. He does really well at picking people off. Of course, when they have TP scroll to TP out, that's going to be a little bit of a weak spot for you, but Yule Scepter is so good on Bloodseeker, you might as well have one of those. So the difficult part is 5-manning, and a thing that people don't use enough is Blood Raging a core target in your team. If you go into a team fight and you have a Tinker in your team or something like that, Blood Rage him, and he's gonna carry for you. Tinker with Aghanims and Blood Rage just destroys everything. And there's a few heroes that do this in the game, so Blood Raging Kunkka, for instance, and the Tidebringer will carry. Just a few things to keep in mind. Bounty Hunter, alright, Bounty and Ricky are pretty much the same hero, extremely similar, so what we need to think about playing against the Bounty Hunter is he's gonna snipe Courier. It's gonna happen. If you're playing mid against Bounty Hunter, you probably don't even send out your salve until the Courier is upgraded, unless you see Bounty Hunter on the map. If you see him showing somewhere on the map, then you can do it. Bounty wants to take fights all the time. In that way, he's similar to Pudge. He wants to keep taking fights. Doesn't really matter if it's team fights or pickoffs. It used to be hard for him to team fight, but ever since the track allows the Shuriken to bounce, it's pretty strong. And the Shuriken toss is incredibly powerful. Level 3, it deals 300 damage in a 1-instance nuke. That's remarkable. Not many heroes in Dota have a nuke that at level 3 does 300 damage. Most of them do 300 damage at level 4. So because of this, despite being level starved for roaming around so much, you can still be very impactful when you hit your level 6 and can hit multiple people with this. And biggest thing to keep in mind with Bounty Hunter is just not getting caught out by stunts. You want to sit back, throw your shuriken, throw it on a creep if you have to, and bounce it towards the targets. And then when you see a chance to go in and pick up a sweet kill like Skyrath or someone who will take so much damage from your Janata hit, then you can move in, sure. But the reason that your positioning is so important, of course, is that you don't have any way of escaping. Sure, you have Shadow Walk, and that might work against some teams, but a simple dust and you're dead. So positioning is pretty difficult. Dust and you're dead. Broodmother is next up on the table. Well, pretty much the same thing here. If you have a dust against her, you might be able to kill her, but that's only if you get damage onto her before she runs into the trees. Biggest thing for Broodmother is always playing towards the tree line, trying to make sure that enemies can't catch you. And for this very reason, some of her biggest counters are Batrider, who can chase after her, Storm Spirit, who can jump from so far away and keep chasing you into tree line as well, and Beastmaster, in fact. Oh, okay, we have recently taken action. Alright, no problem, Valve. You know, whatever I can do to make the community a better place. But yeah, Beastmaster is also a really good hero against Broodmother, because you probably have a Necro build coming up anyway. The Roar is very good for keeping her in place, and your Hawk is going to help just trying to see her when she runs into the tree line. Because even if you have dusted her, but you didn't manage to get damage onto her and she skitters away into a tree line, then you need to have some vision somehow. And that's where Batrider, Storm, and Beastmaster are really good counters. For Broodmother herself, though, I would say she's good at pressuring any safe lane that doesn't have good AoE. Supports that don't have AoE spells early on are just gonna lose the lane. AA, Bane, Ogre Magi, even Witch Doctor to some extent. Sure, he has the cast that can bounce around, but it doesn't really do that much. The Silencer doesn't really support that well against it. All of these heroes are gonna struggle. Lich is also bad at supporting against her, despite having Frost Armor, which is a nice skill. And that's the key thing. You need to take over your lane if you play Broodmother. So if you pick it into a lane where they have, say for instance, they have a Legion plus Rubik lane or something, you're never going to be able to pressure that if they know what they're doing. So just keep in mind what you pick it against. Broodmother is the kind of last pick hero. very much like Huskar in that regard. It's a cheesy kind of hero. Unless you have played it a ton and then you know how to play around some of these harder heroes, but that's the general image of it. We keep going on the dust and they're dead kind of theme here. Clinkz next. Clinkz is a very strong carry in the sense that he can run across the entire map and control the enemy. He also is weak against 5-man in a way, but at the same time not, because he split pushes pretty fast, and with his ulti, he can easily go and backdoor a tier 1 tower. So if the enemy's 5-manning a lot early on, you can make a lot of stuff happen across the map and just force them to react. And whenever they split up, that's when Clinkz is strong. He doesn't really have any way to escape though if they go on him. Same thing there, just invis, but Dust is very often gonna secure a kill on you. So I think the strong part about Clinkz is playing around a stunner in your team. Anyone who can set up for you with a disable, and then you just pop strafe and kill. You can kill the #1 core on the enemy team. You can kill a really farmed hero if you just have a full duration Fiend's Grip or whatever. Okay, that's exaggerating. You don't need a full duration Fiend's Grip. Any disable, and you're gonna be able to kill most heroes. I think Desolator build is probably the best for most games, but sometimes against heroes like Ember, you might want to go Orchid just to be able to catch them out and kill them, because these heroes, like Ember Spirit, who splits up so much and split pushes, or heroes like Storm Spirit, who wants to farm and gets shut down by silence so much, you can counter them pretty hard with the Orchid build. Drow Ranger is a hero that wants to finish the game early. She falls into the same category as Dragon Knight in that regard, but she has a little bit easier late game, I suppose, because she can buff up her entire team, and if you have the right carry in your team, or a carry on the mid lane, that is, they can also deal tons of physical damage, such as maybe a TA. The thing about Drow, she has a very strong laning stage. She's a long-range safe laner who cannot really be harassed by most offlaners. Like Sand King doesn't do anything, Clockwerk has a hard time getting close enough, even then he can get gusted back. Dark Seer is gonna struggle to do any damage at all onto her. What's her weakness then? Well, she's weak against heroes that jump her or run at her very quickly. PA, Bloodseeker, Templar Assassin with a dagger, even an enemy Void chronoing you. Anything that closes distance quickly is gonna be hard for you to play against. You are sort of good against Storm Spirit, but that's only if you don't instant die. So I think Drow Ranger is one of the best heroes to pair up with like a Shadow Demon or Dazzle or anything like that. And ever since the introduction of Hurricane Pike, she's a lot stronger than she used to be. Alright, next hero, Ember Spirit. Ember Spirit is very, very strong late game. He can always solve the, different lanes being pushed with his remnants and travel. He can always be in every team fight if you make sure to have a remnant with your team when you travel away to deal with split push. I think a big weakness for Ember Spirit is Silencer. There are a few heroes in the game that just get really countered by this. If the enemy have a Silencer in their team and they're ganking you with an Invis hero or Blink hero, you can die instantly. The power of Ember is though that he can kite everyone in the game. He actually can just keep jumping around and playing with his enemy while dealing tons of damage. He's a great hero to pair up with Magnus, and you don't really have to fear going late game. But the big issue is you don't fear going late game because your damage is so good, but your high ground push is terrible. You don't hit buildings that much as Ember. Unless the enemy are dead, you don't hit buildings. So he's all about fighting and farming, not at all about pushing. Faceless Void, he has been played a lot recently. The last year has been a beautiful year for Void. This is a hero that can be carry or offlane currently, and he does very good on both those positions. His main weakness is long duration stunts, and also silences can be hard to deal with, but if you get Manta Style and Diffusal, you kind of just shrug them off later on. But since the way Time Walk works, you have a 2-second window where you're going to backtrack all the damage you took in the last 2 seconds. But if a stun lasts longer than 2 seconds, then you will take the damage from the stun and you cannot jump away from it afterwards, even with a single stun. So what are these things? What is good against Void? Well, for instance, Sand King. Sand King and his Burrow Strike, it's 2.17 second stun. So you can't actually time walk the damage from Burrow Strike. anytime you Burst Strike Void, he will take that damage and he will keep that damage. There's nothing he can do about it. And that's just on a single stun. Most of the time, you need to chain stun to bring down a Void. But heroes like Sand King, Slardar with his 2.5 second duration stun, Gyrocopter, in fact, with Homing Missile is pretty good against him because it's 2 second stun, 2.2 on level 1. And it has quite a bit of damage. If you level it up, actually, it's super evil against Void. 500 damage, potentially, at a 2.8 second stun. It's gonna really crash down on Void. Other than that, I think some of the biggest weaknesses for Void, getting ruptured and silenced by Bloodseeker is really hard to play against. And any hero that can burst you quick enough that you cannot time walk and heal away. And anything that makes sure you can't play on low HP. So that's why Bloodseeker is already good. But Necrophos, for instance, his ulti is so good against Void. Because you can't really jump away. If you go low HP, you can't keep fighting. And that's not what you want if you're Void. You want to be able to keep fighting non-stop. And a big thing about the hero that people don't understand is that time dilation is just insanely strong. It's 12 second duration and 22 second cooldown, and then it slows for 8% per spell that you have on cooldown. What this means is that if the enemy has any spell that's longer than 10 second cooldown, which is a lot of spells in the game, there's a ton of spells in the game that are longer than that, and you use time dilation on them instantly. Okay, I'm gonna picture you a scenario here. So say we're playing against telekinesis on Rubik, or even a Rubik with, okay, yes, you know, he's Rubik with telekinesis and Fade Bolt. Okay, he used his Fade Bolt. Sadly, it's only level 3, so it's 12 second cooldown and telekinesis. Well, if we instantly use W, then we're gonna lock these 2 skills. He's gonna get slowed for it, and even if he gets out of this slow, when your time dilation is up, you can use it again, and you're gonna lock the skills once more before he has cast them a second time. And that's the power of Void. The enemy cannot cast their spells more than once in a game, in a team fight. A little bit of a long talk there, but that's the power, and Rubik was just an example. Hope you understand this. Gyrocopter used to be a very popular carry, but now not so much anymore. I think Gyro is a strong hero all game rounds. Honestly, he has his power peak early on where Rocket Barrage is super strong paired up with your ulti. He plays good around any hero that can hold the enemy in place. So if you have a Puck in your team, or again, it's similar to the Lycan in that regard. You want to hold them still so you can shoot them down and not allow people to get away from you. And that's also the big, as I said, getting away from you is the big reason he stopped being picked so much. The Glimmer Cape proved to be very effective against Rocket Barrage. Very often the build on Gyrocopter is like speedy items, Sanjiasha, running people down. That means he runs away from his team while he's chasing you. And then his team is not there to dust you or put down sentries or whatever. So Glimmer Cape, really good counter to this hero. And other than that, he's super good against Visage. I guess that's one of the things that should be mentioned. If you ever play against a Visage and you worry about this hero being too strong and you can't kill the familiars, then Gyrocopter is your man. He just kills all the birds with a flak. Next hero, Juggernaut. I think Jugger is one of the most reliable carries in the game. He's hard to play against in the sense that Blade Fury allows him magic immunity whenever he wants. 18 second cooldown is very low. Damage is pretty good. You struggle no matter if you stack up or if you split up. It's going to be hard in different ways against Jugger. If you split up and farm across the map, then maybe someone will get Omni Slash surprise and die instantly, as that's tons of damage. But if you stack up too much and take a big team fight, then Blade Fury deals insane damage for enemies who stack closely. A combo that we don't see that often, that I would love to see more, that I think Juggernaut is super strong with, is Darkseer. Iron Shell on Juggernaut and then you spin it's just gonna make it so everyone has to immediately run away from you if they don't have BKB or other magic immunity available. And I think, yeah, he's just a very reliable carry. Manta Diffusal, that kind of shenanigan is super strong on him. Since he has the critical strike, his solutions benefit from this. Lone Druids. Lone Druid has fallen out of favor, and I think the hero is still pretty strong, but he's just a little bit figured out. Have gone better at playing against split push, I think, and understand it better. Ever since TI3, we have seen people get better and better against split push because it is honestly a big part of Dota, understanding map balance and where to go when. And Lone Druid abuses people who don't understand this, and he also does push very hard with this 5-manning. And I think one of the best combos for Lone Druid, honestly, is right next to him. It's Juggernaut. The healing ward for his bear allows you to go high ground so easily. You force the enemy to initiate into you instead of you initiating on them when you go high ground. And that's normally not the case, and that makes it extremely easy to go high ground, since even if your creeps die instantly, the bear, it's so tanky, the healing ward's gonna make sure that you can siege all you want. And that's really the name of the game for Lone Druid. You want to finish the game. Chen is also a hero that you should be pairing up with a lot if you want to play Lone Druid. The army of creeps plus a bear makes it pretty hard for the enemy to initiate into you. That's about it for this hero. Luna. This is also a pushing hero, also a pushing carry, but this carry scales very well into late game. She has the Moonglaves and her Lunar Blessing, making her very strong whenever there are multiple targets. And while she doesn't man-fight that well, for instance, if she's 1-on-1 against a Lifestealer, and both of you have similar items, then you're gonna lose for sure. Lifestealer is very strong, and if you don't have anyone to bounce your glaives to, then that's gonna be very difficult to fight. But the best part about Luna is her ultimate deals insane damage, and all you really need to do is get close to the enemy, to the heart of the fight. So building survivability and running to the heart of the fight, having your Manta Styles as well with you, you can just break a team fight down with your ulti. And similar style actually for Medusa. Your ulti also needs to be in the heart of the fight, go to the center. You should be the very center of the universe when you play Medusa. People underestimate how good the mana shield is a lot and go on her when they can't actually kill her. Some of the biggest weaknesses for Medusa obviously is mana burn, the same kit as Wraith King struggles against. So Nyx, Invoker, Anti-mage, all these heroes are pretty hard to play against. But on top of that, I also think that Medusa struggles against AoE spells that control you. What I mean by that is anything that you need to run around or cannot pass, like Disruptor Kinetic Fields or Fissure or Tusk's Ice Shards, anything that makes you run around it and can't go in is going to be really, really difficult to play against because you have so little mobility. And you're probably a big part of your team's net worth, so if your team is without you and you can't get there because you're being controlled, that is really bad for you. For that reason, I think if you play against any of those heroes, Hurricane Pike is a very strong item for Medusa. Allows you to join your team and destroy the enemy. Okay, we have Abed here. I think Meepo he's one of those heroes who kind of gets countered by everything and by nothing. It kind of makes no sense when you say it like that, but single target damage only is pretty good, because then you can burst one Meepo extremely quickly and that one dies. However, that's not so good if that Meepo gets saved by any form of defensive support or a Force Staff or E-Blade stopping all the right clicks or whatever, and he just gets out with that Meepo. All the others are going to be full HP. Then you have the other mentality that, okay, AoE damage against Meepo, so all the Meepos are going to take a ton of damage. Well, that is true, it's pretty good, but normal AoE damage against Meepo is not super strong. For instance, Sand King and his Epicenter, it deals tons of damage, and all the Meepos are going to take a lot of damage. But they have magic resistance as well, increased one. So they have more magic resistance than normal, and if you can't finish off one of them, then it's going to be difficult. I think the heroes that Meepo struggle against most in the game is actually Legion Commander, very high on this list. I think it's hard to play against Legion Commander. I think a farmed Lifestealer can be extremely powerful as well. Well, if you get more items than him, maybe you could actually outcarry it. Any form of empowered carry, like PA with Empower, just shreds you to pieces. Obviously, the minus armor from Elder Titan is really, really good against Meepo. And other than that, I think actually Wraith King is good against Meepo. Wraith King carry, getting some items, jumping in and fighting against one of the Meepos. If you kill him, you all get slowed a lot, and then you have to poof to get away. And if you brought down the Wraith King, you probably had all your meepos there, so poofing to get away is already going to be hard. And if any of Wraith King's allies are nearby to make use of the slow, then you're in trouble. Obviously, Bloodseeker is also good against meepo, but I don't think it's insanely good against it. Despite getting so much movement speed against meepo, I don't see it being a counter. If you ever get ensnared, you're probably just stuck there. Most Bloodseekers don't really go for any item like BKB early. It's kind of hard to do that. If you go Yule Scepter, sure, you can Yules, but then you just get another ensnare when you come down. And Rupture is not all that good against a good meepo player. The ruptured targets can probably just teleport out with the travels. And since you don't take any damage when you travel to base with Rupture, because it's a long distance, longer than 1300, then you, or 1325 I think it is, then you're gonna have a hard time. So I don't think Bloodseeker is actually the #1 problem. If you want to counter a meepo, then pick like Magnus and empower a PA or something. PA, of course, having evasion as well. It's super, super good against meepo because he needs to go Bloodthorn. That's his only counter to evasion is Bloodthorn. Since he can't go MKB, playing around that is pretty good. Long talk about meepo, but let's move on. I think Mirana is a very good combo hero. There are so many setups that you can use in your team. SD for one, the Bane is another great target. Anything that can set up for an arrow to make sure a guaranteed kill is really, really nice to have in your team. But even just playing Mirana on the mid lane, you don't need to have a core, like a setup like that. If you go Aghanims and just farm up, you're going to have a massive impact in the center of the fight. And the Aghanims Blink Dagger builds, it centers around that fact. You go to the heart of the fight, deal tons of damage, and then you can leap away. And Mirana is all about bursting enemy down and playing towards her heavy mobility. I used to play a lot of carrying Mirana like 9 years ago, like super long ago, and it worked out a lot. But people were like, "Oh, but Mirana has no real carry skill. She has leap, invis, a stun, and a nuke. None of this is like a crit or a bash or something, or like Ursa scaling damage when you hit someone." But the reason it worked so well was because you have leap. You can choose who you go on just by having this in your team or in your skill build. So what that makes is that your carry is super mobile and can go on the back line, killing off the enemy supports. And that's really what Mirana does so well. Kites the enemy carry, kills the enemy supports. Alright, I was done with Mirana. Good timing for my battery to run out. Morphling, very similar in the same sense that he also has a mobility item, or mobility skill. Sorry, I'm talking so much, I'm confusing some words. But having waveform, he can also choose who he goes on in a team fight. And that's a pretty powerful tool, as he also deals damage to a target immediately. And then you have your ulti to reposition if you do get caught out, and you can morph strength to become tankier. Morphling is very hard to take a team fight against if you don't have silence or AA in your team. This is another time where AA just shines. His favorite targets to play against is Morphling and Huskar and Alchemist. These are heroes that desperately want to be able to heal up. And if you morph gain with AA ulti on you, you just instant die, so don't do that. The power of Morphling is really split pushing, because he can always have a replicate ready, and the only way he dies is by being chain stunned. In fact, even then he can morph, but like killed without being able to click R. Alright? You have one button you want to be able to hit. If you hit that button and you're not stunned or silenced, you're out, and the enemy forced a lot of rotations to deal with your split push, and you are winning map control. That's the #1 name of the game when you're playing Morphling. Control the enemy, force them to go where you want, and be able to hit R, right? So what is he weak against? Well, Silencer, AA, Skywrath, I would say Ricky as well. The smokescreen is very, very good against heroes like this who are split pushing, because you can predict their movement, and when they come, you just silence them, hold them there, and kill them. It's a very long duration silence as well, being able to make use of that full 6-second duration. And that is about it for Morphling. He's also very good pairing up with any hero that you can replicate to make use of easy farm, like Axe, for instance, in your team. If you replicate him, you get to counter Helix, which farms jungle very fast. So just a little trick to keep in mind. Naga Siren next. This hero can work as a support or a carry very easily. She can carry from mid lane quite easily as well. If you're playing as a carry, you need to be very on top of your game with micro, sending your illusions everywhere and just farming efficiently, which is hard to do in Dota because of all the different threats that can instant kill you and swing the entire tide of the game. So it's not that the micro is like impossible to do, or no one's ever done it. It's that microing while staying on top of everything else is pretty hard in Dota. But the big tool of Naga, apart from just being an illusion carry that takes over the game later on with Manta Octarine and never allows the enemy to do anything because you have 45-second cooldown song, is that you can play her as a support. And if you do, she is one of the best counters in the game to wombo combos. Probably the best counter in the game to wombo combos, even better than Silencer, I would say. Because if you're next to the team fight, the enemy goes in, say they have Void or something, and he chronos, you can song already right there. You can just say, no chrono. We're gonna stop everything right here. Your chrono is useless, and then you run in and you have a look at the enemy team's position, and you know, look at it, and then you deem should we take the fight or not. If you have anything like a Enigma in your team or Disruptor who can drop some spells before you cancel the song, that's gonna just instant win the team fight. Naturally, you know, if you've seen the play, you know that stuff can always turn around. Gotta be worried about the BKB turnarounds, but Disruptor and Enigma are probably the best two counters or combos with a support Naga, and a carry Naga. Obviously, the Shadow Demon is just gonna be crazy good with. And in fact, Dazzle and Naga have some merit too. If you're playing Naga with Dazzle on the lane, you have your illusions already on level 1. It's almost 3 of them. You can run up to the enemy, hug them very closely, because you have a very small collision size on Naga, one of the few heroes who have lower than the others, and get the Shadow Heal Bomb, the Shadow Wave. So that's one thing to keep in mind. She does hurt a lot, because of Riptide as well, lowering the enemy armor and the physical damage from Dazzle. So, nice little combo. Nyx Assasin. This hero is currently pretty popular, made popular by Bushi. Some 7.8k MMR, I think. Nyx Spammer, who's very strong at this hero. He goes for the Aghanims early. I think Nyx power is that he's hard to bring down. And if you go Aghanims first, your HP is going to be very high. So it's hard for him to burst you before you get Spiked Carapace off. A little bit same thing as Void and his Time Walk. Sorry, 1 second. And if you have the Burrow, that not only increases your survivability by an immense amount, it's also going to allow you to regenerate after fights and keep going. But on top of that, it also gives that insane range on Impale and Mana Burn, allowing you to high ground siege a little bit, but defend high ground like nothing. It's so easy to do. And if you're really good at playing Nyx Assassin, the Spiked Carapace when you're burrowed is AoE stun, and that's really big. So if you have a Blink and Aghanims on Nyx, you can burrow, stun them from far away, unburrow, blink in, burrow, and then Spiked Carapace, and that's gonna chain stun people for, what is it, like almost 5-second chain stun? It's pretty good for one hero. And the power of Nyx, obviously, we talked about it earlier, Mana Burn is a big asset for him. So any int hero, really, he's pretty good against. Late into the game, Mana Burn is going to deal up to 700, 800 damage, maybe against an OD or something. And you counter heroes who need to have their mana to stay alive, like a Medusa or Wraith King. And yeah, of course, cooldown reduction when Aghanims happens as well. I'm just mentioning brief stuff. Anyway, Phantom Assassin next. This hero is ultra aggressive, and the Stifling Dagger now being so good, it got a massive buff a while ago where it turned into a physical attack. Previously it was just a farming spell with a little bit of slow and a pure damage nuke for no damage at all. Now it's one of your auto attacks flying out, and it's really, really good. The thing about PA is she can sit back at a safe distance, keep throwing daggers, and if you're not sure about jumping in and taking the fight just yet, you can just keep throwing a few daggers. If you get a crit on anyone, boom, you just turn the switch, go in, kill that guy really quick, and keep fighting from there. I think the biggest thing for PA is that you want to have disables in your team and possibly some spell that can save you, because you're going to go in deep, just running in for the enemy backline, going for the low armor targets because you bring them down so fast, and all you need is someone who can set this up for you. The things you need to look out for, already mentioned, Bloodseeker is a super hard counter for PA. I played Bloodseeker against Miracle when he played PA mid, most recently when I played against him, and it doesn't really matter who you are. If you're PA against Bloodseeker, you get ruptured, that's 12 seconds of you not moving, because even when you Phantom Strike, the range is 1000. That's not enough. If you move over 1300, you're not going to take any rupture damage, but if you move 1000, you're going to take a crap ton of rupture damage. Some other heroes that are going to be hard for you to play against on PA. I don't know. I actually think that she's good against a lot of different things. I think Axe is one of the pure counters to her, because he plays towards her own damage and the fact that she has so little HP. But other than that, I think just really good disables are what she struggles against. Legion Commander, obviously his ulti is a disable in itself, and then the Blade Mill gonna return your damage onto you. Any team that can get rich enough to afford Silver's Edge and hit you with that, breaking your evasion, is gonna be pretty dangerous. And you just have to look out for spell damage, honestly. Stuff like Pudge is super dangerous for you. If you get hooked and dismembered, for a carry, you are very squishy. So positioning is very important, and defensive supports would have been nice to have for her. Next up, Phantom Lancer. Phantom Assassin, Phantom Lancer. I think Phantom Lancer is hard here to deal with because of his illusions. In a team fight, it's pretty hard to organize your team to bring down the real PL. And even if you start going on him on your own, maybe he just uses Doppel Walk, and then when you try and chase him, your team is disoriented on who to kill, and you're going to be unable to bring him down as all the illusions with Diffusal just paddle away at you, I guess, because that's our weapon. He is a great hero at bringing down anything that doesn't have AoE. You need to have some AoE in your team so that you can identify quickly which Phantom Lancer is the real one. There are a few things that you can do to find the real one as well. I'm not sure if the Veil trick works anymore, but for instance, having a Darkseer in your team, if you manage to put the Iron Shell on the real PL, then you're still going to see the real PL when he comes out of his Doppelwalk, because it's still going to have the Iron Shell. So anything that marks the target in that way. This doesn't work with Shadow Strike from Queen of Pain or something like that, though, because he actually purges himself when he doppelgangers. So it's a little bit hard to do it, but Iron Shell does not get purged. Buy it. Either way, actually, it might get purged now. I'm not sure. Either way, I think PL, he just struggles against AoE. Like, the biggest counter is Earthshaker, and after that, Legion Commander is also on that list. And on top of it, Invoker with all his AoE spells are really, really good. And anything that's just single damage or single target is going to be so easy for you to play against, which is kind of interesting because some of the single target heroes are good in a way against PL, but then they're not. Like Bane, for instance, his Enfeeble is an unpurgeable thing that marks the target, right? That's what we just talked about. But then at the same time, all your spells are single target. You cannot play Bane against PL and have a good time. The two things never go together. So just AoE damage is going to be your big weakness. Razor. This hero is very similar to Viper in execution. Razor pairs up very well with any form of minus armor in your team. He also needs your team to have some disables because he doesn't carry any of his own. But he's really good at chasing people down. The Static Link is an anti-carry spell and anti-low mobility spell. See, like, some carries are very mobile, like PL, for instance, can quickly just get away with this double walk and just running away because of his high movement speed with travels and so on. So Static Link is going to be terrible against him, but against a hero like, I don't know, say Lifestealer, then Static Link is going to be super useful. You can just run in on them and man up against them. Or even if you get a stun on the enemy carry and you start Static Storm and Static Link, draining their damage, then it doesn't really matter if they man up against you. Even heroes like Sven, who normally have so much damage, can be countered by Razor pretty hard. But late game, you do fall off, because the fights are typically quicker and quicker the later the game goes. In the early game, scrappy team fights, later quick fights, and then Static Link becomes worse. Riki, similar to Bounty Hunter, messes a lot with the mid lane, snipes courier, stuff like that. The only difference being, Riki doesn't really give gold to his team. He takes the gold for himself and becomes a carry. That's what he does. Riki is basically a carry with phase shift from Puck. And he has the carry version of phase shift in the sense that it's longer cooldown, but it's also auto-attacking in an AoE. And it's interesting talking about Puck, because Riki and Puck is one of the most evil combinations you could ever throw at your enemy. You smokescreen them, you Puck ulti them. So they're silenced and they're stuck. They have to run away to get away from the silence, but then they get stunned. And while they're in this, puzzle, you're just auto-attacking away at everyone that you caught with Tricks of the Trade. One of the most underestimated combos, I think. Other than that, I just think that Riki, he preys on the weak in the sense that he needs to find low HP, low armor heroes like Wisp and just kill them repeatedly. He really doesn't do that well against carry heroes early on, but once he gets his few items, just Diffusal and Echo Saber, suddenly he is going to be hitting as hard as a 4-slotted carry in some of the games. And I didn't really mention his weaknesses. I guess Riki, any Invis hero like this, same for Bounty, same for Slark, same for any hero who needs to run around. Of course, Slark has his ulti, which is a different Invis where he gets revealed, but not really. Any hero like this suffers against AoE spells. If you have any good AoE in your team, you're going to be able to throw these spells at the Riki very quickly. Single target spells are not good. And why is that? Because he has phase shifts, remember? He can just use his ulti and get away. So if you try to venge stun him, okay, he uses ulti, then he silences you, kills you, runs away, and tells his team about it, It's not a good time. However, if you just fisher him from far away, dear God, that's very hard to dodge with the Tricks of the Trade, because the spell is more instant. And that's the truth for many AoE spells. Next here is Shadow Fiend. Goes very well in the minus armor box as well that we talked about earlier. The Venge, the Dazzle, the Slardar, this kind of strategy. SF is in a bad spot right now, but one of the most entertaining mid heroes to watch. And purely is about outlaning your opponent, outplaying them. He gets hurt a lot by roamers though. I think one of his biggest weaknesses in the game is Ogre Magi. Because you go down on mid lane as Shadow Fiend, you come to your lane, and level 1 Shadow Fiend is extremely weak. Then Ogre is just sitting there, looking at you, and he can just run at your face and kill you. There's nothing you can do. You have no escape mechanism. You have nothing. The thing is, Shadow Fiend farms very well, gets a lot of items, and plays around with that. But in the early game, that's his weakness. I'm not even going to say that a specific hero, other than Ogre, is his counter. It's just that his early game, when he doesn't have any items, he is going to struggle. And without any support from your team, you sometimes might just get shut down completely. Next hero, Slark. Slark, as we know and love, kills the weak as well. In every single game he plays, he will be going for the backline and looking for the easy kills. Killing off anyone with a stun early on in the team fight should be the approach that you should have, or a silence, of course, as they also could be very dangerous to you. Slark suffers very hard against AoE spells as well. Invoker, Timbersaw, Puck to an extent, and like Shaker or Elder Titan. Anyone who can deal with you even when you pop your ulti is super good. Because the way it works is you go in Invis, you have your Shadow Blade, you run at someone, you hit them, and you start punching them with Dark Pact and Pounce. And then when your Dark Pact is done, then you probably click ulti because they've started hitting you and there's stuns coming your way and stuff. But that's when those AoE stuns are super good. You need to just wait out the Dark Pact timing, and when he tries to do anything after that, if he's pounding away or whatever, you just Fisher him and he's quickly dead. Fisher is, of course, just a placeholder for any other disabled that you may have at this point. Sniper. Sniper is dangerous hero to play because any hero that... Sorry. Any hero that has the ability to jump on you and just get close to you is gonna destroy you. I think Sniper very heavily relies on having teammates who can save you, like Vengeful, Shadow Demon, Dazzle. And I say Vengeful because the way you get saved as a Sniper is not just being saved temporarily. You need to be brought out of that situation. So Venge Swap is super strong for just relocating people. And I think the power of Sniper... No. The power of Sniper is that he can actually teamfight pretty well with the shrapnel. It's hard to fight into. It's a very strong slow, and it deals tons of damage if you fight inside it. So anyone with AoE skills that can hold the enemy in place is pretty good for Sniper to play with. And his weakness is heroes like PA, Lycan, Lifestealer, Legion Commander to an extent, and Slark. These heroes that just get on top of you and kill you. Spectre, actually also on that list. Spectre, also super good against Sniper. I think Spectre is a hero that should probably always aim to go for the squishiest target on the enemy side and just keep fighting from there. She's pretty hard to straight up kill because of dispersion, just dealing damage back at you. But if you ever split up and Desolate starts adding extra damage from the Haunt Illusions and also from possible Manta and the real Spectre, of course, your supports are just gonna die very quickly. Good hero to deal with Spectre, I think, is AA because of his Ice Blast working pretty well against her. She doesn't always have heal, but Urn is pretty common on Spectre, and she does kind of get bursted down very easily when she has the Shatter. The reason for this is that when she has that low HP and is about to shatter, your team is just gonna motivate themselves to go on her more. I don't know. It's just the way every game that I see Spectre and she gets hit by this, suddenly people kill her like nothing. Whereas if no one else is really marking her for death, she will just slowly run you all down. Right, next hero up. TA, huh? Interesting hero. I have a few games played on this hero. I think TA... Do I really want to give away the biggest counters and the biggest heroes? Should I do that for you guys? I don't know. Alright. I will give you some secrets. I will share some secrets. This hero, I mentioned her multiple times already, that she's in the list for the minus armor heroes. I think one of the best heroes to pair with TA is Slardar. In the entire game, I think Slardar is probably the best hero to have on your team if you're a Templar. Another hero that's really high on the list is Morphling. I'm gonna motivate these things immediately after because it might not make sense immediately. Templar Assassin needs stuns. More than any of the other carry, TA needs stuns in her team. Because she jumps in, she's pretty fragile, but her damage is it's just unparalleled. And if the enemy cannot get themselves out of a situation from being stunned, then it's up to their teammates to save them. But that's not always possible. And since you kill people in just a second or so, all you really need is a hero that can go in with you and disable them. So that's why I say Slardar and Morphling, because they are super mobile and they also have low cooldown spells that can disable. I would say Beastmaster, because the Roar is so good and the attack speed is nice, but the Roar has super long cooldown, 70 seconds. You're going to want to use that once in a team fight. But in a long team fight, if you have heroes like Slardar or Morphling that can lock the enemy down for you, you're going to kill everyone. Some heroes that TA struggles against is... Well, she struggles against any damage over time. That's what everyone knows, right? Refraction gets brought down by it. But some of the damage over time heroes are fine, and you can play around it. See, the biggest danger for TA is disables and damage over time. Combine those two things, and you're gonna know what counters her a little bit more. Kunkka, for instance, having 3 spells that are all disables. Yes, I count X mark as a disable because for 4 seconds time, you can't really get away. You can start running, but you know that you're coming back to the same spot. So he effectively has 3 different disables in my mind. And then he has many instances of damage on Torrent, which is gonna kill off all the refraction charges. And then it slows you for 4 seconds afterwards. It's just Torrent is an insanely overpowered skill, and one of the best counters in the game. I think after that, Huskar, Jakiro, Venomancer Viper a little bit, but not so much. Doombringer with his multiple damage instances. He has Doom, the Infernal Blade, and the Scorched Earth all being damage over time. It's really, really good against TA. All these different things are hard to play against, but what TA is good against herself, though, is heroes that have decent HP probably or whatever, but low armor. You can just jump in and kill them because they don't mitigate physical damage that well. So jumping a Wisp, a Scarwrath, an Alchemist. Alchemist before he gets items doesn't have any armor at all. You can kill them so quickly. And I think the biggest heroes to pair for you besides Morphling and Slardar is just going to be any single hero with a stun. It doesn't really matter who. Any single hero. And that's about it. Going late game, you can feel safe. Super extra long talk on TA, but, you know, it's personal favorite, so it's the way it goes. Terrorblades. Alright, this hero is frustrating to play against, because illusions are really, really good at spreading the enemy out. He does play in the same way that Morphling does in a little bit, that he can split push so much, but he adds more to the pushing early than any other carry, actually. He's probably the best carry at pushing early on in the game. The reason I say this is Metamorphosis is bonus 80 damage. He already has incredible damage before this, and his base attack time goes down, which makes him attack faster, and he gets ranged. And that just means he sieges towers like a monster. If you ever walk into him, you're gonna die very quickly. And because of this, going Dragonlance will allow you to outrange the towers, and you can just push down really hard on every single tier 1 tower on the map and take control of the game. That's what you need to do when you play Terrorblade. Weakness is AoE skills again, actually. AoE skills are really the way to deal with Terrorblade, because if you try and single target against him, it's pretty hard at first to just get in and throw your spells. Typically, single target stuff is much shorter range. AoE skills, you can throw from far away and be safe, fire and forget kind of stuff. But if you deal some damage to all his illusions as well, they die pretty quickly. They don't have very much HP. They take 400% damage. So I think the weakness is if you draft an entire team that has something like, you know, Venge, Ursa, and then we have Bane, and then we have offlane like Beastmaster, and then we have someone more like, I don't know, we have a jungle Legion commander, I suppose. Legion's good against Terrorblade though, but we give you Legion just as a bonus. Then you're not gonna be able to kill off all the illusions apart from the overwhelming odds. That's the only way to do it, and that's a weakness. Terrorblade just takes towers with it. Yeah, his big weakness is magical damage as well, since his armor is so incredibly high. Starts with 10 armor, I believe. You can't really kill him with physical damage early on. Troll Warlord, fallen out of favor, but he's pretty interesting to me as a hero. I think he can pair up nicely with some heroes, but the heroes that he would pair up nicely with are carry heroes, and Morphling is a carry hero, so it's kind of hard to combo Troll with anything, I feel. Currently I have some ideas how you could play him, but I haven't tested any of this, so it's kind of hard to share. But I think Troll is in a terrible spot right now. What you need to do is have a mid hero that can make use of your physical damage, so that would be like TA or Phantom Assassin or Tiny, any of these heroes, or even a Magnus actually, empowering himself and then empowering you in a team fight, so he can deal tons of damage with your ulti. Anything like that can pair up nicely with a troll. The weakness of troll is being kited like for days and days. He suffers more heavily than most of the other heroes that I mentioned about trying to chase people down. It's gonna be hard for him. And you don't really want to build a blink dagger on him either, because it kind of doesn't make sense in many scenarios, but sometimes you have to do it. Ursa though, he's also a hero that gets kited as his biggest weakness, but it's very natural to go blink dagger on this hero because you don't really need to buy damage items early on. You have all your damage comes from your skills. You have so much of it. The Fury Swipes and the Overpower are gonna be enough on its own, but then you have the slow from Earth Shock and your ulti to protect you. So you have survivability, you have a way to slow the enemy, and you have tons of damage all in one in your skill set. So all you need is mobility in your item build. I think Ursa, he's a hero that can dominate early on, but he doesn't really push high ground that well. So if you're playing against him, just have some high ground defenders that can do well, and try not to get picked off. He's really good at playing the split up game where the enemy are just too spread, and then he kills any supports he goes on. He kills most of the offlaners as well pretty easily on his own. So 5 manning is pretty strong against him. Try and counter him. And then it's just about making sure you don't burn ultis and stuff when he has the 80% damage reduction on, because that's kind of Ursa's biggest tool, trying to stay alive with that ulti. It's very similar to a Slark in my eyes. Venge, I think, is a very good hero in many different ways. She can be played as a core, she can be played as a support, and no matter which, she's gonna make her entire team have relevant physical damage. This is sort of the same thing as Drow does, only Venge does it also to the melee heroes. And it's not just about the percentage damage, because okay, you know, plus 36% damage sounds okay, but maybe not amazing. My support Oracle is still not gonna right click hard just because of 36% more damage. Okay, how about we add 6 minus armor as well? Well, suddenly, even just the support is actually clicking for quite a bit of damage. Due to these reasons, Venge is pretty good at going together with her team. She's very good at taking early Roche, pushing as 5. She pairs up extremely naturally with Beastmaster, since he has the attack speed aura and she has the damage aura, and she has the minus armor as well. And then they have really good lockdown and also really good anti-BKB. The two of them are insanely good against a single core kind of lineup. And that's the thing I was going to get to. The swap is so good at countering a single core lineup, and it's also good for just interrupting channeling spells. If you pick Venge against an enemy Enigma, for instance, he just has to sit back and not use Black Hole unless he Black Holes you. If you're a support, you just stay far away and you're fine. That's good for you. Next up, Venomancer. This hero is actually just shit. Yeah, I don't like Venomancer. I think he's very boring. So I'm not going to talk about him. Next up, Viper. He's almost as boring as Venomancer. But at least, you know, he can deal some decent physical damage. So Viper, he does benefit a lot from the introduction of Hurricane Pike. Dragonlance is really good for him as well. Just the build-up is nice. You can chase people down very easily. And there are some heroes in the game that can't avoid doing AoE damage. So due to that fact, Corrosive Skin is really good for defending against those skills. You just put yourself, again, goes back to what I've said about a few heroes, like Medusa and so on. You want to be in the heart of the fight, the center of the fight. You want to be what everyone is looking at. Because when they use their spells, you are close to them, they get messed up. Like a Zeus, for instance. Zeus is probably one of the worst heroes against Viper. But if you do go into a team fight and you throw out your Arc Lightning, you get slowed down, you don't really do any damage to the Viper anyway, and you will get chased down, you don't have any mobility items, and that's what I wanted to touch on. Viper is good against people who don't have Blink, people who don't have mobility, and he suffers a little bit against stuff like Puck, who have so much mobility and can just play around you all day and ignore you, even just use you and keep killing your team. And he's also very good against damage over time. Just one more thing to mention. The Corrosive Skin is extremely good for dealing damage. As soon as if you're taking damage and that source is closer than 1400, if they're within a 1400 radius from you, then you're gonna slow them down. So that means that if Queen of Pain Shadow strikes you and then blinks away, she's still gonna get slowed. So you can just run her down, and she's gonna get slowed for so long. The entire duration is just gonna be amazingly good. I think Viper falls into the same category as Tide in the sense that you should never really focus the Viper first. Same as Tidehunter, and there are a few other heroes in the game that I feel you shouldn't really try and kill first, like Abaddon, probably Wraith King in many scenarios. Undying is also in that list, you know, and Viper makes this list. You don't want to focus him first. All right, next up, Weaver. What? No, not Zeus. Get out of here. Weaver is a hero that is pretty good as long as the enemy don't have Riki. I feel Riki is a very hard counter to him, being able to silence you and prevent you from jumping away. But Weaver's damage is amazing, his minus armor is good, and he can run people down. I think he's underestimated in the current state of the game. The items like Dragonlance, Medallion, even just the casual Blightstone are super good. And he has pretty few weaknesses, but Silence is really, really good against him. So Skywrath and Puck are some of the heroes you don't want to play against. Riki as well. And anything melee is good for you to play against as Weaver, because you can mess with them. You can throw your swarm at them and then run through them and just play with them. All right, we're in on the last tab. I realize this is taking a lot of time, but we're doing AA. My voice is actually struggling. Ancient Apparition. He is one of those solutions. You know, he has the key. He's the key master to how to counter all these regeneration heroes. I mentioned earlier Alchemist, Huskar, who did I say earlier? Morphling as well. Or any team that wants to 5-man push early, because they always rely on mech or on Vladimir's or on some form of healing in their team. And all you need to do with AA is sit on a different part of the map, throw a massive snowball at them, and farm away with your Midas. That's about it. Bane, super good at single targets, very good at messing with the mid lane. Probably one of the best heroes at just, you know, bothering the mid lane early on. Downside being he is decent at fighting, not amazing at team fighting though. He's not very good at pushing. He's not very good at late game, despite Fiend Script going through BKB and Enfeeble not being purgeable. The enemy will have more and more disables the later the game goes, and if they have disables, you're just dead. I think Bane is one of those combo heroes where you need to set it up for your team to do something. You set up with a Nightmare, everyone closes in, then you throw a Sven Stormbolt on them and just kill the target. Very good at protecting the safe lane and getting kills on the enemy offlaner. Probably one of the hardest heroes to lane against in the game, but after that he falls off pretty heavily. Batrider, this hero is just wonderful, and throughout Dota 2, never mind Dota 2, throughout the history of Dota, right? Let's call it that. He is one of the most relevant competitive heroes in the game. And that's because he has one unique tool that is really, really good. He can reliably fly in, grab one enemy, pull him back to your team, and force a fight. And that might sound really simple, but very few heroes can do that as easily as Batrider. And there are a few heroes that counter it. You know, obviously the Venge, Oracle, stuff that can stop your lasso is super good. Even just a Legion Commander or Abaddon. But it's still very, very quick. When he goes on someone, he will blink in, grab, and force staff back, and then he's already kidnapping them. And that tool in itself, I think, is invaluable. I think he's always going to be super relevant competitively. Batrider is a new hero. He wasn't even around for a lot of in the history of Dota 2. Or the history of Dota. What? Are you kidding? He's not a relatively new hero, dude. He's been around for a long time. I've played for a ton of years. I'm not going to waste any time on responding to you, but he is definitely not new in Dota or Dota 2. Chen. Chen is one of those push heroes again. We're back to the same thing. The Dragon Knight, the Juggernaut, the Lone Druid, the Chen, the Luna, you know. He fits in with all these heroes. The 5-man pushing. You want to get the high ground? Okay, Chen is your man. He is in a bad spot against some AoE, but since he has the Hand of God to heal everyone in your team and heal all your creeps to full HP, that is super strong at countering the AoE. You can also save teammates pretty well with the Send Home, and I think that's relevant all game long. So while some people say he's a worse version of Enchantress, I actually do respect Chen a lot as a hero. I think he's super dangerous, and a good way to play against him is just to gank him, like do one committed heavy gank on Chen early, and it's gonna take a long time for him to get new creeps. It doesn't really go that quickly to build up your entire army again. And that's the weakness of Chen in competitive, is that if the enemy play high tempo gaming and there's one big team fight and Chen dies and all his creeps are dead, they can just keep going, keep rolling, and ward up your jungle, and when, you know, Chen has no creeps, he's just useless all of a sudden. Next up, Crystal Maiden actually has an incredibly high win rate in all brackets, I think. And the highest skill bracket that I could look at in Dota Buff, I think it's 5k plus games. She had a 55% win rate or so, I think. And that's pretty amazing, because I don't see her being used that much. It's very surprising to me, but her aura is so good. You can't underestimate the passive effect of Arcane Aura. Giving 3 mana regeneration per second to your teammates. Some of your teammates don't even have 3 mana regen to begin with. You're gonna more than double their mana regen by doing this. And some teammates will be able to flash farm a lot faster. So CM pairs up pretty well with anyone who can farm with spells. That eliminates a few heroes in the game, but most of them still stay. And that's probably a strength. She fits in very many lineups. The weakness of Crystal Maiden is she doesn't do that well if the enemy managed to get close to you, but your best friend is going to be Glimmer Cape. Just being able to stay alive, and if you're having really good position and you realize that no one is going to go on you, you can Glimmer Cape a teammate and save them. It's also a very cheap item to buy, so it's really all you need, Tranquil Boots and Glimmer Cape. Obviously when I play her, I go like Midas, BKB, and Divine Rapier, but I think you probably need only a Glimmer Cape. And I won't say that she has any glaring weakness. I mean, obviously her ulti is channeling. It's insane damage though, and you force one of your enemies to stop your channeling, so they have to waste a stun on you in a sense, because you're just a support. And if you are full HP and your teammates are being focused and killed, and then you start your ulti, they have to change priority to you. And that's probably the power of Crystal Maiden, the way I see it. Darkseer pressures enemy safe lane melee course. Anything that's melee carry will have a hard time against Darkseer. Apart from Bloodseeker, he's the only safe lane melee hero that will pretty easily lane against Iron Shells, because he can just heal every creep he kills. He will get HP back. I think Darkseer is gonna struggle against Oracle more than anything else. It's the hardest support to be up against. Other than that, Skywrath and Silencer are not his best of friends. Oracle can obviously perch the Iron Shell, and the Silencer and Skywrath with their high damage and heavy lane presence is pretty hard to leech experience from. That's the thing. If Darkseer only gets gold from the lane by Iron Shelling, and then you zone him out with supports, then you're fine. You've won against the Darkseer in a way, because he needs to get levels as well. He does head into a jungle though and farm very quickly with Iron Shell, so I don't think he can be shut down that easily. I think he's one of the best combo heroes in the game. Any AoE spell will be much better when you can vacuum the enemy together. 550 radius, you pull everyone together, and then whatever spell that you fancy can land on top of that. Pretty amazing. As I mentioned earlier, I think Juggernaut is super good with Darkseer. Iron Shelling up any of these heroes that latch onto the enemy is pretty strong. And for laning, as dumb as it sounds, and it's kind of embarrassing that it works, Riki and Bounty Hunter laning together with Darkseer, actually just win lanes very easily. And that's happened in competitive, that's happened in, 7.5k MMR average, and it's sure as hell gonna happen in your, 2, 3, 4k MMR games as well. You will struggle against that. It's annoying. Dazzle. I think Dazzle is the best hero in the game at saving a particular target. It's just that you save them temporarily. The shallow grave has to be with a promise of something else as well, right? So it's great for scenarios where you have one hero that the enemy have to kill quickly, and if they don't, he will burn them all to death. So obviously it's the best counter or best combo with Huskar, and ironically, actually one of the best counters as well because of all his minus armor. All the damage from Dazzle is physical, so he fits extremely well into these minus armor matchups and so on. Any hero that reduces the enemy armor is going to be a good pal for Dazzle to have, and they probably have a lot of physical damage themselves, so they're probably going to enjoy your weave. Weave is one of the best skills of Dazzle, and people don't respect this skill at all. People have no idea how big effect this has in some team fights that I've analyzed. I'm just like, okay, you see the underfarmed sniper on your team with only like 130 damage hit the enemy and do like 300 damage because weave is on them for 20 seconds now, and it's just crazy. But Dazzle does struggle against AA. He's one of those heroes that wants to heal up non-stop, and AA ulti is going to counter it pretty well. Other than that, silence is probably the way to go. If you're playing a core against Dazzle, you probably need to kill Dazzle first, because he's going to save his teammates. So you just jump in, orchid him or whatever, and kill off the Dazzle and move on. And that's the story of Dazzle's support life. Death Prophet. And we're back to the pushing heroes. Death Prophet is a hero that just wants to take all the towers on the map, get an Aegis, and then stand on the enemy high ground with her ulti and just hug the enemy tower to death. She has tons of physical damage and pretty high magic damage as well. She used to have physical, magical, and pure damage when the Spirit Siphon was pure, but now they've changed it to magical, making Veil a very good item build on Death Prophet. Because you lifesteal so much HP, and armor is nice for you anyway, so building Veil is pretty natural. I think Death Prophet is a hero that kind of needs saving heroes in your team. You need something to save you when you get in trouble. So again, Venge or something that can reposition you if the enemy do manage to lock you down finally. Can give you time to get away and heal up with Exorcism. And again, she gets hard countered by AA. AA has a few heroes in the game that he just does extremely well against. She can't heal from her ulti, she can't heal from her Spirit Siphon, and AA is probably not even going to be in the team fight. He's just going to throw snowballs at you from the other side of the map. You can't really counter that if you're a Death Prophet. So that's the way it goes. Disruptor. I already mentioned the Naga Siren Disruptor combo is extremely valuable, the sleep into Disruptor ulti. But Disruptor is a very strong laning support. He has 160 damage on level 1 Thunderstrike, and he has the mana to use it multiple times. And I know that in NA pubs there's some support who has been spamming it a lot recently, and he goes Null Talisman first, so he can spam it like 4 times the Thunderstrike, with the regeneration kicking in, of course. And it's incredibly strong at just shoving away the enemy offlaner. The biggest strength of Disruptor is that he can cancel channeling spells from 1800 away. The Glimpse, it's not an instant cancel, but it will cancel them. And also, it works decently to catch people. The weakness is that you need to have vision on them. So any hero in your team that can provide vision along with Disruptor, it's going to make it much easier to chase people down. So heroes like Bounty Hunter who can track, or Bloodseeker who has the thirst, and so on, will allow you to chase people down and get so many kills. Enchantress, super strong all game actually. Early game pressure with an enchant and taking over some creeps. She's hard to kill for any carry hero. The physical damage is just not there. You need to buy PKB to hit her. She can heal up, so she's very sustainable to take towers with her creeps as well. It's pretty easy. And Impetus being pure damage and piercing BKB is pretty fearsome. I think her damage is pretty glaring, or her weakness is pretty glaring in the fact that magical damage just shits on her. She doesn't have any HP at all. Hurricane Pike is super good for her, and being able to reposition is probably the best way to deal with some of her counters, like Skywrath chasing you or anyone else trying to burst you with magical damage. You just Hurricane Pike over a high ground and run away, because you're among the fastest heroes in the game. She's faster without boots on level 1 than some heroes are with boots, so level 1 you can do some interesting shenanigans because of this. Enigma, well, number 1 wombo combo hero in the game, of course. His ulti is super, super feared in any team fight, but I think what people don't understand is that Midnight Pulse is the true carry. That's the true Enigma, because that's 11-second duration, 5.25 damage pure, 5.25% of your max HP as pure damage for 11 seconds is just crazy good. And this is also BKB piercing. So Midnight Pulse that's actually what Enigma is about, in my opinion. And the threat of the black hole will force the enemy to not be able to take your 5-man push so easily. Because he is definitely a good push hero, and he plays out pretty well into the late game. That's about it. I think his weakness is Silencer. Number 1 weakness in the game. He can just hit his ulti no matter where he is on the map, and he's gonna silence you, even if you have a BKB. So no matter what you do, if there's a Silencer in the game, you cannot channel your black hole. You can of course buy a refresher and channel one more, but that just means Silencer has a refresher as well. So Silencer Enigma is a very, very hard matchup for the Enigma if he has good positioning on Silencer. Other than that, Rubik and Venge are 2 heroes that are extremely hard to play against, and Disruptor with the long range glimpse. Invoker next. Invoker is a hero that can pretty much play into any lineup, I think. He pushes well, he goes late game very well, he holds off the enemy push really well, and between Quas Wex and Quas Exhort, you can either be ultra aggressive in the enemy's face or farm up a lot. It's really your preference. But the thing about Invoker is that he combos extremely well with stuns. I don't think he minds that much if the enemy is stuns themselves, in fact, because he's so fast. He has blink and stuff like or will buy a blink and stuff like that. That he can easily play around the enemy having tons of disables. But if you have a lot of disables, sunstrikes are gonna happen nonstop. There was a moment. There was some highlight video being made about awesome Invoker play, and it was Koikwa, and he is a super good Quas Exhort Invoker player. And people were looking at the highlight video just going, this is kind of boring because it's just him nuking stun targets with Sunstrike. And yeah, that's the thing. Invoker plays so good around disables. He got kills non-stop across the map. If anyone in your team has a disable for you, you can Sunstrike. That's a crazy power to have. So I think that Invoker playing greedy style is pretty hard to play against. And his biggest weakness is heroes to pressure mid lane. Ricky, Bounty Hunter. These heroes are very good to shut him down. Kiro, Tower Pusher again. We're down to the pushing lineups. He's very good at controlling, in fact, team fights. He can throw down his ulti to make sure enemies can't walk in a certain way. Of course, you want to hit someone with it initially and force them to walk out of it, but then they can't really walk back into it. So that's a pretty strong ulti in that regard. The ulti is easy to play around though, maybe, but if you pair it up with the correct heroes, Void, Darkseer, any other wombo combo hero, then Jakiro is really strong. And the Ice Path is not to be underestimated. 2.5 second duration on a 9-second cooldown. This is very similar to the 2.5 second duration on an 8-second cooldown Slardar stun. So having these low cooldown disables gonna make it so the enemy can't really TP out from you almost ever, and you pressure towers very good. The only downside to Jakiro is that he doesn't do shit when the enemy has a BKB up. Not anything at all. You have all your spells being magical damage and stuff that wants to lock the enemy in place or slow their attack down or whatever, all of it can be ignored when the BKB is up. So you're on the timer if you're playing this hero. Coddle. Coddle is different though. He is also one of the fastest heroes in the game. And he is extremely versatile in the sense that he pushes high ground very, very effectively now. When you get Aghanims, your Illuminate is going to heal for as much as it damages. Well, not really. It's going to heal for 500 if you channel it fully. It's not as much as it would damage because your spell damage amplification doesn't work on this shit. But the fact that it heals in AoE for so much on a very low cooldown, if you have Chakra Magic, of course, there's no cooldown before you channel your next one when the first one ended. That is pretty crazy. There's no other hero that has that effective AoE healing, in fact, as an Aghanim's Coddle. And once he has the Aghanims, all that vision he has allows him to play much more safely as a support, and getting Aghanim's gem is very, very good. I think one of his biggest counters is very it's very thematical. It's the Night Stalker. Just being able to pop the ulti all the time and turning it into nighttime. Keeper of the Light doesn't really play well against that at all. And one of the big things that Keeper has going for him is the Mana Leak. Mana Leak makes him one of the best counters in the game to, again, Medusa and Timbersaw and any other hero that relies heavily on moving around in a team fight. Not so good against Storm, who can jump around, because he doesn't actually lose mana when he's jumping. And it's going to be a little bit difficult for you to play against him if he jumps you. Another gimmicky combo that you can do is Chakra Magic. Lowering cooldowns, you can combo it with anything like Bristleback, double Quill Spraying. The Chaos Knight is a very good combo for you. Lower cooldown on the stun. Kunkka, lower cooldown on the Tidebringer with an Echo Saber, can double Tidebringer. And other than that, even PA actually. If you have a carry PA and she's really farmed, if you chakra her, she can double dagger instantly. And that is pretty fearsome. Imagine if both of those crit, which could happen. That's pretty much all I have to say for Coddle. His weakness is that he doesn't do that well if the enemy get close to him. So he needs to play around the enemy a lot with the Mana Leak, with the Blinding Light, just staying away from them. Leshrac, pushing hero again, but this one with a lot of damage. He can really fight quite well. He needs to get HP though. Bloodstone is a very natural build for him. Getting HP enough to just take the team fights allows you to be the center of the team fight where all your damage is gonna go on to the enemy. Your ulti is very, very strong, but you don't really have enough survivability if you're not very farmed to be in the center of the fight. So pair him up with like a Winter Wyvern or something like that, make the enemy cluster up with the ulti, and then afterwards you chain stun them, run in, burn them down with Leshrac. Pretty good combo. Also works pretty well with Darkseer, even though it's not a massive wombo combo, it's not so easy to land maybe. The fact that you clump the enemy up is what you want to do when you have a Leshrac. His weakness is same as Medusa, I would say. Just Nyx, Anti-mage, any mana burners are going to be hard to play against. I also think that Wraith King is very good against Leshrac, because he can go in on him, fight him really hard, and then the slow is going to trigger, you respawn, and then you kill the Leshrac for sure, if you didn't already. Lich. This is the lane-winning hero. The Lux, one of the best ones, because he can passively win a lane. You don't even have to fight the enemy. You can just deny the range creep all the time, and you will take over the enemy safe lane. If you run Lich, you're probably guaranteed to run a duo lane, meaning you have a 2-1-2 setup, or a 2-1-1 with a jungler, I guess, but that's not going to be very likely. So the power of Lich is you can enable pretty much any pick in your team. That's the thing. You can pick any hero and have a decent laning stage just because you have a Lich next to you denying your range creep, keeping your lane back for you, and making sure your enemy is lower level than you. And if the enemy is lower level than you and your creeps are close to your tower, you probably have an easy time laning no matter who you are. But some of the notorious combos, Lich and Void, The Lich ulti and Void ulti, very good together. Lich can bounce around his Chain Frost. Pretty hard to play against multiple creeps, so you have to be careful when you throw it out. I think Lich paired up together with Tidehunter is pretty good. Clockwerk or any other strong offlaner is a nice combo. And next up, Lina. Lina is an interesting hero, and a hero that hasn't been used at all to counter the Huskar. Despite Huskar being so played at TI6, it's because Lina needs Aghanims before she gets the pure damage on her Laguna Blade. But what Lina has that people haven't really given credit to is Light Strike Array being so low cooldown. It's a 2.5 second stun, 7 second cooldown, right? That's better than Slardar's, and this one is ranged. So if you buy Aetherlands, for instance, you will be able to throw this from super far away very often and stun people in an AoE. That is so valuable. The downside to Lina is that she doesn't do well at all when the enemy get close to her, and it's not that easy to land a stun since it has a 2.5 second cast delay. Anyone with a high movement speed is actually good against Lina just by that fact. And I think she struggles heavily against heroes like Razor, super fast, runs in on her, kills her quickly. And heroes that you can't use combo as easily, like Lifestealer and Juggernaut, are also hard to play against. But I think she should be playable in the current state of Lina, and she got her base attack time lowered again, so her core position, like mid, could be decent now, I suppose. Then right next to her, Lion, very similar to Lina in a sense. Both of them are all magic damage, very quick burst. Lion is much more versatile though, and as a support, he's so much easier to play. He has really good disable early game. He can chain stun someone for a total of 6.6 seconds. That on its own is probably going to allow a lot of heroes in your team to solo kill whatever target it is you're holding. But on top of it, you'll also have Finger of Death. So Lion is one of the best gankers in the game due to all these skills. He just needs to get level 6. And once he has it, 160 second cooldown, sure, that's super long, but his kill potential is almost unparalleled at level 6. So the thing about him is you need to, every time you have ulti ready, you need to go for aggressive moves. Lion's big weakness is, well, he's very similar to Lina in that regard. Anyone who goes on him is going to be hard to play against, but those heroes are typically high maneuverability heroes. Heroes like Puck, Storm, Queen, whatever. Well, Lion counters those heroes as well. If they try and go on you and you get a Hex on them, they're instantly dead as well. So Lion is all about positioning. I don't think there are that many heroes that hard counter the Lion. Obviously, Huskar is pretty hard to play against, but even then, you have 6.6 second duration stuns. That's not bad against anyone. I think the hard part about Lion is early game, when you're not level 6 yet, your level 1 stun is pretty terrible. 1.1 second stun, 80 damage. It's not impressive. The Hex is very good, 2.5 second duration, but it's no damage at all. So early game is difficult, but later on, all you need is a Blink Dagger, really. Next up, Nature's Prophet. Well, this is the rat hero, of course, same as Lone Druid, and can't really mention these heroes without thinking of Bulldog's, shit-eating grin when he's taking the enemy racks while a team fight is going poorly for the enemy team. The global impact from Furion allows him to be used in quite a few drafts, but sadly for him currently, it's a little bit hard to rely on split push. People are really good at catching split pushers, I have to say. Even though it doesn't always seem like that, people have improved a lot at that. His biggest weakness, heroes like Spirit Breaker, just destroy him, I feel. Heroes that can jump on you, or natural Quelling Blade carriers. I'm gonna throw down on this list as well, because Sprout is very good for controlling people. It's incredibly good for doing that. The cast range is really long. The duration is 6 seconds on max level. And you can, of course, Sprout yourself and TP away. But anyone who carries Quelling Blade and can gank you very easily is going to be good against you. I think Wraith King is also a good hero against him. On lane, Gyrocopter is pretty good to deal with the treants, but a good play from Nature's Prophet means he can lane against pretty much anyone, because it's very hard to stop the treants from pulling the creeps and getting impact on the game. Alright, we can probably finish this in under 3 hours, guys. I'm losing all my voice here, but I'm doing it for you, and this will be on YouTube later, so I don't have to do it again. Necrophos. Necrophos is a hero that is sort of anti-tank, if you will. His disable on the ulti pierces BKB. That's one of the biggest things, but the fact that he needs the enemy to be low HP for his ulti to be useful relies heavily on team play. Because when you quickly want to kill someone in the later state of the game, say you have Aghanims and you know that if you kill one guy, they can't buy back, game is over, right? That's one of his powers. But the downside is you need to be very, very on point with your timing. You need to go at the same time and get so much damage bursted. He pairs up nicely with heroes like Lion due to the way Finger of Death works and quickly Reaper Scything afterwards. But it's also very, very easy to counter. Necrophos is not good because of Glimmer Cape and Lotus Orb and the, I'm gonna say kind of insane use of Force Staff that we have seen this past year. He does struggle a lot against these things because you can Glimmer someone after he ultied and it's still gonna block the damage. So I'm not gonna say Necro is a super good hero, but he can work in some push strats. Right. Next hero, Ogre Magi. Fire Blast, Ignite, yeah. Well, the thing about Ogre Magi is he buffs up any of your carries and make you able to take the late game a little bit easier. He's also securing lanes in a way. He roams very heavily and can secure the mid lane. So if you have Ogre and a second good lane winning support, you can win your safe lane and then send Ogre mid, and if the enemy send a support mid too, Ogre can always just clash with them. He can just run at them and scare them away. Sure, they might be able to protect mid, but they risk dying themselves to an angry Ogre. I think the downside to Ogre is that the way you play him with high armor and high HP, you run around and roam, and then you get starved on levels. And if you don't get levels on Ogre, it's actually not that impressive. But if you do get level 11 at a decent timing even, he is really, really powerful. His Ignite is super good against heroes that have Blink Dagger. Just slowing people down and making sure that they can't blink away is sometimes enough for your team to get kills. And that's about it for Ogre. I don't think he has any glaring weakness. He's not a weak hero, but I think he just sometimes doesn't provide enough. He doesn't do enough damage, and sometimes your team just gets too shut down and you're not able to close it out early. Of course, he only has magic damage, and that's a little bit of a weakness, but with Bloodlust in your team, you're going to add so much physical damage to your team. Best combos with Ogre Magi, I would say Tiny, Lone Druid, and Sven, I would say. Probably these heroes. It's not bad to have like Legion Commander or something as well. There are a ton of heroes that can do a lot with Bloodlust, like PA and TA and whatever, but I would say Tiny and Lone Druid are still the best ones. Alright, Oracle. Oracle is a tricky hero to play, but if you're good at it, it's one of the best heroes in the game. His ulti is extremely good at saving people, even better than Dazzle's, possibly. Even better than Dazzle Grave. The thing is, you can break stuns and break their initiation. Not many heroes have this, and then so much different spells as well to save people, right? Abaddon, sure, he can break stuns and then throw a small heal at his ally. Legion Commander can break a stun and then he goes and fights someone. Oracle, he can just completely save one guy from everything. He's like, okay, I'll break the stun that's on you. I'll purge whatever, ailment you have, and then I'll W you so you can't take any more spell damage. It's insanely hard to kill stuff against Oracle. And then the heal comes in as well. His biggest weakness is AA, by far and away, because he relies on healing people so much. And his biggest friend is Huskar. We've seen this in TI, of course. But I also think the biggest weakness, if we're not talking about stopping his function, how about stopping his life? I think the biggest heroes against him are heroes that can jump him. PA and TA, probably two of the best heroes at it, but Ricky should also be mentioned because he can just suddenly be next to the Oracle, and the silence is so good for bringing him down. Because even if you jump him with a Phantom Assassin or TA or whatever, he can still just hit them with a W and they can't actually kill him. So Ricky is super good because of this, being able to silence him and bring him down. Alright, going for next hero, OD. OD, well, his hardest counter is Nyx. There's no doubt that OD's hardest counter is Nyx. You have an AoE ulti that's massive, and all Nyx needs to do is be within that AoE and hit his E when you're about to ulti, and you can't actually use your ulti. His mana burn is gonna burn you for like 800 damage easily in late game, which is not fun, since it also takes away your mana, lowering your damage. But what's the strength of OD? Well, he does set up very nicely for gankers. His Astral Imprisonment is gonna allow so many ganks to happen, and his damage against non-BKB heroes is probably one of the best in the game. Arcane Orb is incredibly good at bringing people down quickly. If you don't get silenced or stunned, or the enemy has a magic immunity like Repel or BKB or something, you will kill stuff so insanely fast if you're a farmed OD. For this reason, I think that he pairs pretty well with Silencer, who can stop the enemy from using any of their skills, and then just have like Blink Dagger and Blink In and kill people during the silence duration. You very easily bring them down that quickly. And when the silence is about to run out, you can always just imprison them and get out, or imprison yourself and blink away if they don't have an instant damage. I think Blink Dagger is very underestimated on this hero. Next hero, Puck. Well, I've gone to Puck quite a few times in my, going through all the heroes here. The strength and the agi heroes do love Puck for his being able to hold the enemy close and make sure they can't escape. $1 million dream coil and stuff. But what I haven't mentioned is that he's also super good at just playing against stuff that needs to be silenced. Puck against Oracle or against Dazzle or against Rasta or anything like that is so good. You just jump in, they can't do anything, and very often you're able to kill them within 3 seconds. And having that silence available naturally on the hero without having to buy an Orchid is sometimes reason enough to just pick up Puck against certain lineups. Of course, one of the biggest combos that I haven't really mentioned, actually, I skipped it when we were on that hero, is Lifestealer. Infest bombing with Puck is really, really powerful. And that's about it. He also struggles against Nyx for one pretty obvious reason. Illusory Orb travels for a distance almost 2,000 long. And you also have 2 other AoE skills. What does this tell you? Well, all Nyx needs to do is sit within any of these spells and use his Spike Carapace. Hell, he can even wait until you used Orb, blink into it with Carapace on, and then stun you with the Carapace, and then he can chain stun. So, for all these reasons, that's a very hard matchup for you. Next is Pugna. Pugna is this sort of medic, I guess. He is good against heavy magic damage lineups or lineups that need to do a lot of expensive spell casting in teamfight. If you just hide away your Nether Ward, the enemy need to find and kill it, or they can't take the fight. The downside is that when you commit your ward, the enemy can maybe just back off, and then you can't really chase them because your ward was already committed. You have to wait for the next cooldown or so, and it's a little bit hard to play against diffusal heroes when you're Pugna. You're very squishy, and very often your way of surviving is decrypting the enemy carry so he can't hit you, and then life draining him so that you get tons of HP from that, as he takes tons of damage. But if they have a diffusal, they can purge themselves, or if you try to decrypt yourself, they can purge you as well. and you will die very quickly. But Pugn's biggest strength that is not really tapped, I would say, is that he can heal people so well and keep them alive. But, of course, he always suffers against people who go on the back line. That's the downside for him. Queen of Pain. This hero brings tons of damage into any fight. Doesn't really matter what the situation of the fight is. She's going to add a ton of damage. Every time you see a good Queen of Pain player, she's going to have a massive amount of hero damage dealt at the end of the game. Sonic Wave, of course, it's a 135-second cooldown, but if you buy a BKB, that is 95-second cooldown less on all levels. So 40-second cooldown for a pure damage nuke that pierces BKB is pretty good. Her only downside is she doesn't have a TP cancel, and she doesn't have any way to lock the enemy in place or anything. She has a slow, which is decent, but with an Orchid pickup, you can normally kill people before they TP away, actually, or even have them TP away and die to the Orchid burn. So you don't really need to buy Yule Scepter or something like that, unless you feel the enemy has a silence and I need a way to purge myself. Oh, I said BKB. Yeah, Aghanim's. Whatever. I've been talking for like 2.5 hours. Fuck you guys. But some of the heroes that Queen of Pain works really well with is obviously any form of AoE, because you add on to that. If you have just a simple, I don't know, say Magnus in your team, right? Offlane Magnus, mid Queen, for instance. Magnus already deals quite a bit of damage when he RPs someone, skewers them, hits them a few times. And all that damage is going to be worth it because you throw more damage onto that fire. And the power of Queen of Pain is really when she gets the Orchid, she can bring down a lot of heroes that need to cast their spells desperately. But, of course, in the early game, her weakness is she's a puck without a stun, basically, but with more damage. Same but different. Rubik next. Rubik is extremely good against any flashy spells, of course. I mean, that goes without saying. He needs to take their spells to be effective. So against Magnus, against Enigma, any of these heroes, you're easily gonna turn the fight. But I also think people they misunderstand how good Rubik can be without those big ultis. If you just look at a game where the enemy have a, Sven stun or Wraith King or Lina or anything that's low cooldown AoE stun or something like that, or even just single target stun is fine too. Rubik can make so much happen, and I think it's very, very good against Wraith King for the reason that you always get the same shit when you steal from him. You always get the Wraith King Fire Blast. There was a time when you used to get the Vampiric Aura, but that's changed, and it's just so good being able to take that stun. Other than that, I think Rubik is good with Gyrocopter or heroes that need to get close to the enemy, because he can lift them and pull them back. His big downside, though, is he has long cooldown. 22 seconds is a very long time without having telekinesis again. And I think this should honestly be a scaling cooldown. I can't believe it's a 22 second, because it's not that good. And yeah, I wish Rubik gets a buff, actually. But he is pretty good against heavy magic damage. The null field is great. However, he suffers against physical damage. Alright, next hero is Shadow Demon. Combo with any illusion hero. Super good with agi heroes in general, and also pretty good with Centaur Warrunner, as he can return damage onto towers, of course. When the towers attack them, they take damage. Other than that, he's also super good at saving people. One of the best, actually. Just disrupting to bring someone out of their misery. But they will come back and live, not just kill them. If you get Aghanims on Shadow Demon, he's also one of the hardest counters to Bristleback, to Huskar, to anything like this, because you can break them. And having triple ulti is pretty powerful. But his strength is really in the early game. He's able to combo with Mirana or with anyone with a stun setup. And if you really know what you're doing, you can also easily get us around by just disrupting, walking up, and there's a possibility the enemy can't even move. So he's a very powerful early gamer. Shadow Shaman, pushing hero again. Similar to Lion in some ways with his disables, but just more about pushing and less about fighting. Sadly, he is a little bit easier to kill early on because he's slower. His movement speed is very terrible. Um, but I think that Rasta, he has his place in any form of a pushing lineup. Outside of that, he can be very hard to play because he heavily relies on going together. Where Lion, sure, he has good disables, but he also has his Finger of Death, being able to instant kill people, and on max level it's only a 40-second cooldown, so you can do it on your own. Whereas Rasta, he doesn't really play in that way. Rasta has 120-second cooldown on all levels, and you really only want to use your Serpent Wards to push towers. So that doesn't limit your solo kill potential. It's more about team play. Rasta with any high burst damage hero is really, really good. I think Ursa is one of the best heroes to pair him up with because of how quickly he can kill anyone. And you just need to get close enough. So when Rasta gets the dagger, he's super strong. Silencer, already mentioned how he counters a ton of heroes, including Enigma. Any channeling spell in the game is possible to break with just you one button click, no matter where you are on the map. That's pretty good, instantly as well. The weakness of Silencer is that while he has a strong laning phase, he doesn't really get away from people that easily unless he has farmed up a 4-staff. And even then, most farmed cores will be able to run you down and kill you quite easily. He can be used as a core himself as well, but then you suffer the fact that when the enemy picks up Magic Immunity, your glaives, while being pure, they don't actually pierce BKB. They're not like the Enchantress Impetus, so he's not a very reliable core in that regard. You need to get the initiation on the enemy always if you're gonna run him as a carry or a mid, else he suffers. And likewise to many of these int heroes, he gets hard countered by Nyx, but that kind of goes without a saying for int heroes. Skywrath. Well, Skywrath and Silencer both are some of the best lane supports in the terms of harassing people. Skywrath does shut people down quite easily, and the fact that he can burst magic or buff magic damage so much makes him a nice pair for any magic damage carry. But I'm not sure that I like Skywrath unless there's a big reason to pick him for his silence. If the enemy has heroes like Sand King with his ulti, or Void that you want to silence so he can't time walk away, or something, then I don't really enjoy having a Skywrath in my team. But of course, if you have a Void in your team as well, or good disables, his ulti can be super powerful, but it's kind of unreliable. It's kind of unreliable because the enemy can still just have a support nearby, and if they Glimmer Cape, well, your Mystic Flare, while the damage numbers are amazing, 1400 damage, wow, that might not be the case with just a simple 4-staff. Storm Spirit. This hero can punish any team that splits up on the map. If they are not 5-manning that much, then Storm Spirit is the best hero that you could have in the game, probably. His ganks are the best in the game, I will say, because he's not dependent on a long cooldown at all. And when he gets farmed, he can jump from literally across the entire map. Of course, that's only with Aegis jump, a little trick. But if you get initiation on someone, if you have Orchid and your electric Vortex, almost every single hero in the game is a pretty easy kill for you. So the most important thing for Storm is his laning phase. And if he doesn't get harassed that much, if he's up against anything that he can farm against on mid, then he will be fine and have a big impact. He suffers heavily against silences and instant nukes. He doesn't really suffer against telegraphed stuff like Stormbolt and Wraith King Stun and Magic Missile. All of these things can easily be juked, but stuff that lands on you, like Enigma Stun, is, for instance, one thing. Just the quick Malefice is going to stun you for a little bit, and then someone chain stuns on top of that. It's pretty hard to play against. And I think some of the best pairings for Storm Spirit is probably having a Lifestealer in your team or a Wisp. These are two of the best heroes, because Infest Bombing is so strong, and relocating the Storm Spirit into a fight is also really strong, paired up with the fact that Wisp can heal the Storm and heal his mana as well. Mana Boots, for instance, gives double mana to the storm, giving Wisp mana as well, and then Tether buff. Next hero is... Yeah, that's the worst hero in the game. He's to the point that he's not even a hero anymore. If he becomes a hero again, I'll make a video and post it. Alright? Keep it at that. Tinker. Tinker is super good at forcing the enemy to go places, sort of the same as Morphling, just splitting them across the map by traveling and marching everywhere. And he also is an incredibly strong burster. The thing is, he can burst from so far away. With the Aetherlands Agonist build, you have to somehow close distance to the Tinker, but with March being spammed, it's pretty hard to do so. I think Tinker is a lot about being able to catch him. So heroes that he's bad against, Batrider, Storm Spirit, Puck, any one of these, or even Invis heroes that can set up on you can be dangerous. And of course Nyx should be mentioned, because whenever you're March farming side lanes, if Nyx has a 4-staff and maxed out level Carapace, he can quite easily find you. He pops Spike Carapace, you get stunned, and then he 4-staffs in to find you in the tree line, and then you're dead. Anyway, that is Tinker. Also super good paired up with Bloodseeker, the Blood Rage for Tinker. Visage. Visage is the hero that has not been used that much competitively for a long time, but I have seen him quite a few times in pubs recently, and he's super strong. I believe he's pretty heavily underestimated. The Grave Chill is very, very good for fighting anyone, since it's sure, it's only a 3-second duration, but it takes away 32% movement speed and 64 attack speed, and you gain this for yourself. So you can just trade so good with anyone. With only 100 mana cost, you can keep doing this to harass anyone. And if you get caught out, you know, say you're running, checking rune or something, and someone with a stun runs into you, they stun you, start hitting you, you just Grave Chill them, run away, and you're going to be super far away. The only downside about Visage is he's pretty hard to play. The familiars are really hard to use properly, and if you play against anything like Gyrocopter, then it's almost impossible. Like, you should probably just split push, because the Flak Cannon instant kills your familiars so easily. So Visage, his strongest suit is the fact that he thrives in team fights. His Soul Assumption is crazy good, 4-second cooldown, and it's a very strong nuke. But the downside being that people can just play around this and split push and stuff, and he doesn't really do that much against it. Yes, you do have stuns to cancel TPs and you have a slow, but most people just blink away and they're too far away from you anyway. If they're split pushing, blink or waveform or something else away. Yeah, Visage mid is playable. Warlock, again, we're down to the pushing heroes. Very strong laning support, low mana cost for an incredibly useful heal. I think that people underestimate how good he is in laning phase, being able to heal for 180 at 90 mana cost. That's 2 heal per mana spent. Few heroes have that good of a laning spell. The Warlock Golem also super good for going high ground. Upheaval can be super good in some team fights for just making sure people can't move around. Suffers when the enemy goes on the backline though. If they have a puck or something, he will find you, cancel your upheaval, and then it's no more fun. But if you cast this from a safe distance and they cannot go on you, then they can't really take that fight. I think Warlock's biggest weakness is probably Sven, I would say. Sven makes short work of any of your golems. If you have Aghanim's, doesn't really matter. Sven just instant kills them with his physical damage. The armor is going to protect him very well from the golems as well, and the movement speed will allow him to get out of the slow. So in every single way, I think Sven is just a counter to Warlock. Also has a stun to cancel your upheaval himself. And to pair up with Warlock, I think Axe Warlock dual lane is pretty good. It's not very easy to pair Warlock with anything because he doesn't have that good skills until he has level 6. But that's about it. Windrunner next. Shackle Shot is pretty hard to land in some scenarios, but it's a very, very powerful stun. 3.75 second duration, and it can shackle 2 enemy heroes. So if you stun one hero, then if he stands still and his teammates are around him, it's very easy for you to blink somewhere and just get the shackle angle. So I'm going to say that she's really good if she has any single stun in her team with her, or anything that holds the enemy in place, then she's pretty good. Her laning is pretty strong as well. With the Aghanim's build up, she gets a lot of HP and can take towers. The weakness is that while Windrun keeps you alive for a little bit, there's a lot of stuff that messes with you beyond that. Like time dilation, for instance, has been a massive reason why she hasn't been played that much. Your Windrun doesn't come back off cooldown and you just die if you don't have it. Another thing that I think is hard for her to play against is silences. Anything that goes on the back line with a silence, just gonna be able to kill her as well. And Windrun as a carry is not really something you want to have in the late game scenario, because when Hexes and Abyssal Blades come out, she dies very easily, no armor. Okay, Winter Wyvern next. Winter Wyvern, ever since the change to Winter's Curse, is so scary to have in your team, because it might very well fuck up your entire initiation. I had a game recently. Oh, what did I play? I played some beautiful... Yeah, I played Lion with Aghanims. God, it was so painful. And I went to Wyvern in my team, and we had a Magnus who got a perfect RP on 3. And I'm like, yeah, I'm level 22 Lion. I'm gonna go in there and get that triple kill, Use my ulti, and then allied Winter Wyvern shows why the hero is so bad now. He uses Winter Curse. Winter Curse counters some lineups. So I'm gonna say Winter Wyvern is not completely out of the meta, but it desires that the enemy team have physical damage enough to kill each other no matter who you target. And that's the thing, no matter who you target. That's the thing I want you to react to. If we play Winter Wyvern and the enemy team has, they have PA, and then they have, some Rasta, some Rubik, and on mid lane they have a Queen of Pain, and they have an off lane Axe, okay? The only one who's gonna kill anyone if we Winter Wyvern ulti is PA. She needs to be the one right-clicking, alright? But what is Winter Wyvern good against then? Winter Wyvern destroys anyone who has illusions. Very good against them. She also is really, really good against lineups that have auras, Vengeful, Beastmaster. They will buff up everyone. And if they have Beastmaster, we saw this so many times at TI6. Beastmaster gets picked, the other team picks Winter Wyvern. Because now we have 45% attack speed increase on everyone. So if you get a big Winter Wyvern ulti, even the supports are going to hit pretty hard. And I think that you should never underestimate the control that Winter Wyvern can bring with the ulti. But it's just very sad to see some of the timings on Winter's Curse. It can be devastating. Alright. And next hero, Witch Doctor. Actually, let me say one more thing on Winter Wyvern. The big weakness of Winter Wyvern, apart from, yourself, is Cold Embrace. Cold Embrace is a great heal and a great way to save people from physical damage, but in some games, you just end up setting up for the enemy team. There are a lot of positional spells in Dota where you aim at a certain location, and if you try and save your teammate with this, and suddenly an arrow comes sailing in or whatever, you just doomed your ally. So there's a lot of heroes that play well against Winter Wyvern because of this. Okay, Witch Doctor, second to last hero. I think Witch Doctor is a very strong laning support. His Voodoo Restoration is really good for healing up and just keep fighting. And because of this, he can trade against pretty much anything. The Paralyzing Cask can be amazing in certain scenarios, but very often against these Manta Illusion metas that we're in right now, it's pretty hard to play Witch Doctor in the mid-game team fights. And a lot of the heroes that are being used have tons of armor, like Juggernaut, like Terrorblade, and so on. And your Death Ward is physical damage. So that leaves only one skill, Maledict. And Maledict is powerful, but it requires Witch Doctors to move fairly closely. Not as closely as before, but you still have to be fairly closely to get this spell off. And he doesn't do that well when he gets jumped. He is just a support after all. But his power lies in pushing and fighting outside of lanes. Fighting in Roche Pit, fighting anywhere where there's only going to be the enemy heroes. and he's very good when there's no illusions around. Final hero, Zeus. One of the best magic burst damage heroes that we could fight in the game. Probably the best. I would say that Zeus is good against any Invis hero, in fact, apart from Ricky. Ricky will namely find you, and if he has a Diffusal Blade, you probably die, unless you have a Force Staff. But Zeus, paired up with, you know, pretty much anything that goes in and wants to find someone to jump on, is really strong. If you use your Thunder God's Wrath as an initiation, as a part to, you know, compared to using it for last hitting, then Thunder God's Wrath is really good. It's 90-second cooldown. It's very good damage for its cooldown and the situation that it hits everyone. And the fact that you can reveal people even if they're invis or hiding in the tree line, I think it's the biggest strength of Zeus. The weakness, of course, he's a mid hero that doesn't really push high ground at all. You can play him as support, but then you're a support without a, you know, reliable disable. You can cancel TPs, but that's it. And I also think that Zeus, we don't see much play of him anymore because of Glimmer Cape. Same spot as Necrophos there, that Glimmer Cape just hard counter him. And that's the way it goes. Anyway, that's it. It took 2 hours and 53 minutes to do this. So almost at 1 hour per category of heroes. And I've been talking nonstop. I'm normally not talking this much, so my voice is kind of rip. I'm gonna upload this video to YouTube. If you missed anything, don't worry about it. That's also why I haven't listened to any music.